And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship Season 3, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks the penultimate round. It is round 4 of 5, and we are here in the North American continent in the country of Canada for the one and only Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Also known as the Montreal Circuit and named after the home Formula 1 hero, Gilles Villeneuve himself, this is a circuit that has a reputation for seeing many a driver's race end up in the Wall of Champions. Albeit, whilst there is that significant wall coming out of the final corner, there's plenty much else to focus on around this circuit, where it being a hybrid street circuit, and indeed a very interesting layout for this circuit, whereby located right in the deep city limits of Montreal City is a circuit that runs around Notre Dame Park, and with it is a very tight set of walls, but also open up racing tarmac. When combined together, it means that this circuit is a power circuit made up of multiple extended straights, numerous chicanes, which are all about getting the speed and the power through the corners and all the way back up to full throttle as soon as possible. And there's that constant risk versus reward about running extremely close to the exit walls. Get it right and you may come away with the ultimate lap, but get it wrong, however, and you very quickly find yourself in the walls. And as our drivers get ready to go racing today, and I'll take you through your schedule very shortly, times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1 at UTC +1. We'll get to see our drivers here look to put the tarmac down, indeed lay down their markers for the season finale in 2 weeks' time. But who will be going into the season finale on a high? Well, we're about to find out. That's that all-important schedule. Well, we get to see that in just under 14 minutes' time, we'll make our way into the qualifying session, 25 minutes in duration, and all of our drivers will be out on circuit looking to do their utmost to get themselves onto pole position in preparation for our endurance race. Kicking off at what will be approximately 5 to 8 when we make our way to the grid. You can see that it has been shortened slightly from the standard 160 minutes. We decided to bring it down to 120 minutes, given the lower turnout of numbers over the last couple of rounds, and therefore our drivers have 2 hours of racing rather than 2 hours and 40 minutes, and therefore we do have 2 hours of thrilling racing action around here. We'll get to see our drivers do their utmost to steer clear of the walls and come out on top. This broadcast is being brought to you live via free media platforms for your viewing pleasure. First, you can tune in via either of the 2 official NXTGEN Racing media channels, which include the YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com and search for NXTGEN Racing, you can tune in then. We say hello to you guys and girls in the YouTube chat. We also do have the Facebook channel, and that'll be at facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. And hello to you guys and girls tuning in via Facebook. And then lastly, on the non-official channel, we do have a broadcast running currently on Twitch at twitch.tv/TX141. And welcome to you all in the Twitch chat. But who is TX141, I hear you ask? Well, allow me to introduce myself. I'm your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit. Depend on me, do you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action tonight and indeed over the rest of the season. And as I drive get set, let's take you through that calendar thus far and what still awaits us going into the season finale at the end of the month. We started off back on the 5th of July in the Watkins Glen Circuit in the state of New York. We'll get to see our drivers take on a circuit which is widely regarded as the mecca of road racing in the US of A, and while our drivers there really had ferocious battles from start to finish, there was heartbreak as well, particularly at the front of the field, with the LMDH class seeing Nick Clibbins from iRace eSports lose out on what seems to be a certain drive to victory, but meanwhile other drivers rose to the occasion by comparison, and the biggest rise was in the LMP3 class, where we got to see a fantastic drive from what was none other, excuse me there, ladies and gentlemen, but none other than our Ignium Motorsport driver who absolutely delivered on the centre stage, and that was Michael Paul. Then in round number 2, we made our way to Belgium for the Circuit de Spa Francorchamps, a circuit that's widely synonymous with endurance racing with the annual 24 Hours of Spa, and on the 19th of July we got to see the battles intensify, and particularly in the GT3 class we got to see the rivalry between the Chemi Motorsport teams and what was SR Technic rise to a high standard, and SR Technic Endurance coming away with a major result there. Then round number 3, last time out, we made our way to Spain and wrap it up a tour of the European continent for this season with the Circuit de Jerez on the 2nd of August. And well, there we got to see CSA Endurance's Stefan Wessels take over the car, albeit expected potentially to be joined by his teammate. His teammate, of course, being none other than Matt Shorter, but it being Shorter's birthday. Therefore, Wessels was required to do the entire race. And well, what a dominant run it was in the LMP3 class, with Wessels winning clear by the best part of a lap, if not 2, over most of the field. And elsewhere in the classes, we got to see the LMP2 Championship wrapped up, which we'll come to very shortly. And in the LMDH class, we got to see Nick Clibbins take his first win of the season on the 3rd time of trying in a highly dramatic conclusion to the race, which saw the lead exchange hands between Azz Williams for NXTGEN Racing Purple and what was Nick Clibbins for iRace eSports over a frenetic final 30 minutes. But now today it's the 16th of August, and with that we are here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and after today our season finale 2 weeks from now will be on the 30th of August at the Circuit of the Americas, and more commonly referred to as COTA. We've been all bringing to a close in the Texas State Circuit in Austin, but we're still plenty of races to come. Let's give you an update on those championship standings going into tonight, and we start off with the LMDH class. And as we can see here, NXTGEN Racing Team Purple lead the way now by only 9 points over iRace eSports. iRace eSports bouncing back at Jerez, and therefore the gap could not be closer. And the idea here will be for iRace eSports tonight to try and close that gap up and put it on a level playing field going into the season finale, if not get at least a couple of points ahead. Meanwhile, in P3, we have NXTGEN Racing Benjamin McCluskey, or the BM team, there on 70 points. They're only ahead of Azz Tech Racing Black based on result countback. And then NXTGEN Racing Pink in P5 on 65 points, falling down there, where we do believe that NXTGEN Racing Pink may have retired from this season due to what is circumstances. But we look forward to seeing them out of the circuit if they are able to make it onto the grid. With the Sim Racing Collective 99 there in P6 on 52 points. Head of NXTGEN Racing Pinky JD. And then at Crest Autosport to wrap up those teams with points. And Josh Brown Motorsport yet to get any points on the board. We then come on to the LMP2 class, and here we can see the championship has already been concluded with Azz Tech Racing on 156 points to the 45 of Azz Tech Racing White, and Azz Tech Racing were a dominant run in the first 3 rounds, wrapping up the championship with 2 rounds to go, so now it is purely a formality tonight and in 2 weeks from now. Meanwhile, NXTGEN Racing at Dark Side there on 0 points, and will Mark Sykes, the driver for the team there, and a switch to the LMP3 class, so therefore be on 0 points going into the tonight in the LMP3 category. Speaking of which, we see CSA Endurance leads the LMP3 category, I should say, and the South African team there leading currently by the best part of what is 7 points ahead of Ignium Motorsport, and what we are seeing a back and forth between the 2 teams, but CSA Endurance tonight we're looking to try and go 1 step further and break clear away, as I do believe we have the absence of Ignium Motorsport, which is unfortunate, and it sets up CSA Endurance to potentially wrap up this championship with a round to spare. Speed 9 Esports B, meanwhile, in P3 on 90 points, they'll be looking to try and leapfrog ahead of Ignium Motorsport, as will Crest Autosport a further 15 points behind, with Black Flag Bandits completing a top 5 there on 70 points, and a 30-point advantage between them and Ignium Motorsport Spark. GT Watson Motorsport are only behind Spark based on result countback, and it's Version Racing and Speed 9 Esports at PW who complete your standings there with regards to drivers who have points, and team Paul Scott there in P10 on 0 points thus far, still looking to pick up the first points in the championship. Then we come on to the GT3 class, last but not least, and here we can see that Chemi Tour E Motorsport UK on 80 points. They are 28 clear of SR Technic Endurance, and only ahead of FR20 Sim Racing Yellow is SR Technic Endurance after the fantastic drive to victory last time out for FR20 Sim Racing Yellow, albeit a sole class of 1 at the Jerez circuit, but they still had to get the car home in one piece. Chemi Tour E Motorsport PT in P4, they're 5 points clear of Chemi Tour E Motorsport, and then we see team Matthew T Davis only behind based on result countback, where 10-point advantage of a Tubby Bye Racing, and then yet to score any points, Core Blimey Racing 113, RUR02, and Rossum's Universal Robots. But coming on to our circuit for today then, it's none other than the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, of which there's only one layout, the traditional Grand Prix layout, and as the drivers make their way around the circuit located within the confines of Parc Jean-Drapeau in the city of Montreal in the state of Quebec in Canada, they'll get to take on some infamous corners and chicanes in particular. For as they make their way on around, you can see from the circuit map provided by iRacing.com, thank you to them for their wonderful simulator, and with it, on top of that as well, an absolutely fantastic set of circuit maps to go with it. It is a circuit which brings together multiple extended straights and a number of hard-hitting chicanes. Whilst this circuit, when it was originally unveiled in its first guise, was considered to be more of a handling circuit, with the tightening of the chicanes and the greater spacing in terms of straights between the chicanes and corner sequences, it has led to this circuit becoming a power circuit, albeit we can't complain of that, as it is an old school style power circuit. You've got to get the power down as soon as possible, be brave on the brakes into the next corner, and also be willing to carry as much speed from corner to corner and apex to apex. And as our drivers make their way down the start-finish straight and up towards the Raj, send out turns 1 and 2, they're going to the sharp left-hand right-angle corner on the brakes for trail braking through into turn number 2 at the hairpin. We'll see our drivers make our way up towards turns 3 and 4. They're the first of a sequence of what is 3 chicanes back-to-back. They'll make their way for the sweeping right into left and find that the exit of the corner is one where you need to get as much power down, but you've got to be careful of the fact the exit is very close, and as they charge their way through the right-hander at turn number 5, flat out there, making sure to turn in nice and early, not to be understeering to the outside wall, then into the braking zone for the second chicane at turns 6 and 7. 6 and 7 is more of a pair of U-shaped bends being brought together, with turn 6 in, our drivers essentially loop back on themselves before turn 7 in the left-hander, and as they make their way out to the right-hander at turn 7, it's their charge all the way down towards turns 8 and 9. The fast chicane turns 8 and 9, we'll see our drivers initially lose quite a bit of speed under braking, but as they exit turn 8, they build up the throttle as soon as possible, and the widest corner exit there, albeit they don't have too much space between the track and the wall, but they'll look to try and exploit as much curve as possible as they make their way down to the Lepingel hairpin, we should say, at turn number 10, and as they make their way onto the brakes for the hairpin, there it's all about being brave on the brakes and looking to try and get up the inside of your rival without locking up. Indeed, multiple ways to approach the hairpin, but get it right and you'll be back on the power as soon as you possibly can, and through the kink of 11 and down the back straight. Heading down the Droit du Casino, also known as the Casino Straight, they'll then make their way up towards the final chicane, the fourth and final chicane at this circuit at turns 13 and 14, and on the exit of the chicane, that is where the Wall of Champions lies, and it is a wall which can catch out many a driver very easily, but everyone will be looking to try and steer clear of it today if they want to come out on top, and we look forward to seeing who exactly there will be the bravest of the bunch and run it extremely close to the wall. But as all of our drivers get get themselves set. Let's take you through those race rules. We can't go racing without rules, of course, and as we can see, setup-wise, it's an open setup series where each team may consist of 1 to 2 drivers, and teams may switch car within class up to round 3, and therefore car swaps now in terms of within the class are not permissible anymore, but will forfeit 50 points in doing so. Indeed, if they change their car as a last round, they will have been penalised. Meanwhile, teams may change car class at any point, will forfeit all points previously accrued, and will for Mark Sykes in the Next Gen Racing Dark Side tonight, we'll definitely get to see that occur with the fact they've moved back to the LMP3 class. Qualifying wise, an open qualifying format shall be used, which will see all the drivers out on circuit, and therefore it will be a crowded circuit, albeit at the same time they'll be looking to get the ultimate possible lap time in, and they've got plenty of time to do so, because we will be splitting the qualifying session into 2 equal halves, with the first 12 minutes being dedicated to the GT3 class, and then the final 12 minutes being dedicated to the Proto classes, so that's the LMDH, the LMP2, and the LMP3s. As for race rules specifically, well, the race shall commence by a rolling start within a designated green flag zone, is the tradition of the Next Gen Racing Proto GT3 Championship. Drivers shall have 3 faster pairs available to them, should they pick up any damage at any point. And, well, we may see our drivers have to make a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 40 or more instant points, and drivers are mandated to make at least 1 pit stop in the race, where they must take on fuel, but changing tyres is entirely optional. And I suspect we will still see multiple pit stops here today, despite the fact the race duration has been reduced somewhat down to 120 minutes from 160, but that's enough rules, regulation, everything between. We make our way back to our live pictures here, ladies and gentlemen. As we do, well, we do look to the man who's right on the ball right now, the CSA Endurance. It's none other than Stefan Vessels as he makes his way up towards what is there, the turn number 10 hairpin, as he comes on through the right-hander. We really has been the force to beat this season, with the number 27 driver absolutely delivering from round to round, albeit didn't go quite well in the first round of the season at Watkins Glen, but after that brief hiccup in rounds 2 and 3, well, the number 27 has absolutely shot back in his full back card, and well, today he'll be looking to try and put the end on this championship and conclude it all with a round to go. But as he makes his way on through there, these LMP3 cars, of course, quite a good introduction to the world of what is prototype racing, but also with their lack of ABS, and on top of that very basic traction control system, they can prove to be quite a handful around circuits where you spend a lot of time going onto the brakes and then return to throttles. We see Vessels, they're going a bit deep at the Virage du Centre and going into the tyre barrier. We won't to do that in the race or in qualifying, but don't be fooled, by the way, with regards to your overlay there. Just briefly refresh itself, ladies and gentlemen. It's not an issue on your side, it's on our side. We are just refreshing our overlay as we have got some driver data being loaded in the background, so we do apologise for that. You will every so often see it intermittently be refreshed, but by the time we go into qualifying, things should have calmed down somewhat. But as all of our drivers now getting themselves comfortably set with only 2.5 minutes before we head into qualifying, and we do have a couple of GT3s in class today, including Azz Tech Endurance here with Sergio Vieira making his way around circuit right now in the 135 BMW M4, and they're in the battle with Chemical eMotorsport UK for the top step of the championship. With Chemical eMotorsport UK, piloted by Alex Meredith, currently your championship leaders going into this round, albeit neither team in attendance last time out, so therefore both are looking to go for gold today. And when most of our teams in the pit lane, the ones who are not at the moment are the LMP2s in particular, and here is Azz Tech Racing with James Smaskersgal behind the wheel, and the Briton here with an absolutely ferocious drive to victory last time out at what was the Jerez circuit, will in the end put in the finishing touches on the LMP2 championship. And right now, Azz Tech Racing at this point just need to focus on getting the car home from round to round and not be worrying about what will be those results anymore, because they've already got the championship in the bag and therefore the pressure is off. Now, I have had a word conveyed to me, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to qualifying. It is not going to be a split qualifying session anymore, given the fact we only do have a grand total at this time of what is 15 cars planned to be in attendance of the qualifying session, although we may have some more join midway through qualifying. So the full 25 minutes will see all 4 classes out on circuit, and they'll all have an opportunity to try and deliver those lap times, where it will make qualifying a little bit more hectic, particularly if you're in a slower castle car, such as in the GT3 machine, such as the one piloted by Vieira here. But in return, it does mean our drivers have plenty more opportunities in which to try and set that ultimate pole lap and give themselves the best opportunities when they go into the race. And as our drivers now get themselves company ready to go, we can see what is Baz Meacham in the LMP3 there for Crest Autosport, making his way on around. And as he comes out of turn number 2, he'll be feeling as though that he's got a good shot at today, albeit I think everyone will be targeting the CSA Endurance team as their marker to beat, and then behind we'll have to wait to see who else will be able to come out on top. But as we do see it, Mitch making his way out towards turns 6 and 7. We're very steady and capable driver. We've seen him in GT3 machinery and also in LMP2 machinery in the past do very well, and thus far this season it has been mixed results for Crest Autosport across the board, albeit Mitch and we're looking to try and put those mixed results at bay today. But as he makes his way on through and in there to the turns 8-9 chicane, rolling his way up through the right hander, the left hander that follows it, and down towards turn number 10. Checker flag is out now, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for us to make our way into qualifying, and who will come out on top after 25 minutes? Let's find out. So as we head into the qualifying session, and apologies there, ladies and gentlemen, for a little bit of silence before we go into qualifying, but just confirm in regards to the change in qualifying arrangements, well, we can start to see everybody making their way on out onto the circuit right now, and Jamie doing the first try to make his way out there for NXTGEN Racing Pinky JD. And as he heads on through and up towards turns 3 and 4 from the right into left here, what does it take to deliver a good qualifying lap at the Montreal circuit? Well, to put it simply, you need to steer clear of the walls, but you need to be incredibly close to them. It sounds like a contradiction. It's not quite that. In the fact, around here, every millimetre of track width you can use for the purposes of entering a corner, alternatively return to full throttle on corner exit, it will be worth 1 or 2 miles an hour, if not more, down the connecting straight from chicane to chicane. You also need to be bold on the brakes. You need to be willing to hit a late apex on entry into each chicane, because that sets you up for the best possible line into the next corner and get it absolutely right, and that will be what puts you on pole versus puts you further down the order. But with the mistake threshold being so low around here, it's so easy to make a mistake at the Montreal circuit. Well, we'll have to wait and see who it's going to be on, who masters that balance, that fine line between risk versus reward. And well, Jamie Doyle feels as though he's one of the ones to do it as he makes his way down the back straight, down the Casino straight and up towards turns 13 and 14. Now this circuit, very popular circuit, particularly in the world of Formula 1, indeed understandable, named after the Ferrari driver of much early years in Formula 1 of Gilles Villeneuve himself. Becoming a home hero here and taking victory, and as we can see here, NXTGEN Racing's Pinky JD making the way down towards turn number 1, and he'll be looking to emulate the spirit of Villeneuve today, as we can see here the LMDH making its way on around. But meanwhile we do look to Joe Pinder, the Ignium Motorsport Spark driver here, albeit in the absence of the number 1 Ignium Motorsport team as piloted by Michael Bull. We still do have the pleasure of seeing the number 26 car making its way on around, and Pinder looking to have a good result today as well, as he makes his way up towards the Water Champion chicane, going from right into left here, and very prominent apex curves between the 2 corners, and those can lead to the car going up onto 2 wheels. When it's up on 2 wheels, it does normally end up just straight lining the chicane, and with it an impact to the wall, alternatively onto the grass, and a trip around in terms of 180 degrees. But as we do see Pinder making his way on to his first lap in terms of flying laps around here. Well, goes a bit deep there, coming out of turn number 2, has to avoid it taking to the grass, catching the car just in time. I think he'll feel as though now he's going to have to reset, regroup, going on to the next lap, as it will be a lap that has not quite worked out. As he makes his way up towards turn at number 6, we'll do it to Benjamin McCluskey, the sole Cadillac here today in the LMDH class. All of our other LMDHs are the BMW M V8 hybrid, whereas we do have the wonderful Cadillac BTS here making its way all around, going through turns at 3 and 4 right now. Good old-fashioned American V8 there, and as he heads up towards turns 6 and 7, well, I can tell you one thing, there's nothing quite like an American V8 in the fact it's that raw guttural sound as he makes his way up towards turns 8 and 9. Well, he'll be getting ready to go onto a lap soon as he does a bit of bobbing and weaving from side to side there, try and get some tyre temperature, and also on top of that also get some brake temperature into the chicanes, and will get himself set up for the next lap. He is technically on an out lap here, is the Benjamin McCluskey machine, as he makes his way up to turn number 10, and meanwhile the first lap's now in on the board there, and in the LMDH class it's 2.5 tenths from iRace eSports to NXTGEN Racing Pinky JD, as we do see Nick Clements here in the number 8. carrying on through here and looking to try and make it 2 wins back-to-back. And well, we do not see NXTGEN Racing Purple take to the grid in the form of Gaz Williams, and I do believe he's had some technical issues at the moment which may be impeding his progress. Then we could in fact see this championship swinging into the hands of iRace eSports, and there it would essentially require iRace eSports to have a retirement in the final round of the season for NXTGEN Racing Purple to be able to usurp them in that championship hunt. As we see there, I believe it was the Jamie Dory machine, the number 13, getting it slightly wrong at the hairpin, and meanwhile Clemens just making his way on through. We have set the fastest time in Sector 1, he's not quite improved in Sector 2, and heading down towards the final 2 corners here. Will he be able to find a little bit more lap time from going from right into left? He doesn't quite abuse the full exit space there in terms of the exit curve, so Clemens heads down towards the timeline. I suspect this is the fastest sector in terms of the final sector, and he now improves his advantage to a 125.095. That's exactly half a second faster than Jamie Dory in the P2 car right now. But meanwhile, in fact, we have had another Cadillac join the grid from what we're hearing. It's Azz Tech Racing Black's Jane Pitt, who's just made his way into the pit lane. So therefore, we will see Pitt out the circuit in that due course. That's great to see. We've got 2 BMWs and 2 Cadillacs. So will bring a degree of parity as we hear there the roar of the Cadillac in the hands of the NXTGEN Racing BM driver of Benjamin McCluskey, roaring on past us there for our delight. As he makes his way out towards turn number 10, we're very shortly getting an onboard lap with him for qualifying. But meanwhile, making his way across the timeline there in the Porsche 992 GT3 is coming to eMotorsport UK's Alex Meredith, who currently is 8.3 seconds off of SR Technic Endurance's best time. I think Meredith is still trying to get the car set up for success, and something not quite right in that car currently. As meanwhile, SR Technic Endurance definitely right now the leaders in terms of this GT3 qualifying session. As meanwhile, we do also have the Ferrari 488 Evo, last week's winner in the GT3 class of Craig Tillotson, making his way out to turn number 2 and onto a lap. They've still got 20 minutes to go in this qualifying session, a long time to go by any stretch of the imagination here. There's plenty of laps available to our drivers, and therefore I think everyone will be feeling at this moment they're just warming themselves up and getting themselves keyed in. But those already put times on the board, they'll fill their banker times, albeit I think Clemens might be feeling as though those banker times right now are improving massively as he goes even faster overall pole, and where's LMDH pole with 24.048. Well, Clemens right now absolutely storming in terms of those times, and well, how will everybody else react later in this qualifying session? That's the big question here, as it does seem as though right now iRace eSports very keen to put this qualifying session out of everybody's reach before anybody really gets geared up and started. But meanwhile, look into the LMP3 class. We can see here when it's Speed9 eSports making the way on around. This is Paul Williams, gets it wrong there into the turn 7-8 chicane, just a little bit too late on the brakes, and in the rear of the car coming on around as he does trying to get it stopped and just holding the brakes now as the field comes on through and finally getting the car turned. And I do believe we are going to see what is the best part of 3 Speed9 eSports cars out in the LMP3 grid today. You did see what was Mark Baker and also Mike Riedner joined together in the car last time out of Jerez, but I do believe now they've separated into 3 separate cars, albeit we'll get confirmation on that a little bit later. But the point being, well, if we do have all 3, there'll be Speed9 eSports, there'll be Speed9 eSports B and Speed9 eSports C, and they're looking to try and make it a 1-2-3 on the podium. And you may remember from the previous season, the Proto GT3 Championship, they did exactly that in the LMP2 class. And as we do see Williams making his way towards another lap very shortly. Well, meanwhile, we do look from him to what is Mike Riedner, the other Speed9 eSports car out on the circuit right now. And Riedner here a little bit slower compared to Williams, albeit still gradually finding his feet in the LMP3 machine and enjoying it as he does so. As he makes his way down the back straight, yet to get a lap on the board, currently on an out lap. I think deciding to make his way back to the pits a couple of times in order to just tweak some settings in the car, get the car fully dialed in as he makes his way on through and on to a lap here. We jump forward with Mike Riedner as he takes us around for a flying lap on the Canadian circuit. He makes his way into turn number 1 and braking 100 metres from corner apex down to second gear, points the car towards the apex of turn number 2, first gear as he now builds up the throttle and corner exit and makes way towards turn number 3. It's a short run here into the first chicane, but he looks to his left for his brake marker, braking at the 50 board. Car's got it right in front of him, but he connects the dots together in terms of the apexes. Doesn't quite use all the runoff area there on the right hand side as he heads up towards turn number 5. Unimpeded there as he heads onto the brakes for turns 6 and 7. Into left-hander, down to second gear, turns it nice and early, uses the race curve to turn the car around. Now feeding in the throttle as he comes out of turn number 7 and down towards 8 and 9. Now a longer run here into the third chicane in sequence, and looking over to his left-hand side for his brake marker. We brake in at the start of the overhead bridge there at the 2 board, the 100 metre board, down to second gear, and now a nice sweeping run out of turn number 9, all the way out towards the turn at 10 hairpin as he heads in towards the right-hander, albeit keeping the car well and firmly over to the left as he brakes about 110 metres from corner apex all the way down to first gear. Decides to turn in early, go for a U-shaped approach to the apex rather than a V-shaped cut, which a lot of drivers will go for, as he now makes his way on down the back straight, flat out here for a time as he goes for the kink of 11 and onwards towards turn 12. Now getting ready for the final braking zone here, the turn 13-14 chicane, the World Champion chicane as he heads onto the brakes, 3, 2, 1, braking there from 150 metres out of corner apex, first gear, joins up the 2 apex there in a straight line, uses all the runoff area there as he exits, and using the full exit curve close to the wall as you want to be, and Mike Reedner there with a nice time. What's it going to be for his first flying lap? It's a 37.122. I think he'll be feeling as though there's a bit more time out there, given the fact that he has got what is almost a 2.5 second deficit to the Motorsport Spark in P5, but still the Speed 9 eSports B driver giving us a brilliant demonstration of a lap around this circuit in the LMP3 machine. I think in particular it's the chicanes where he just wants to carry a bit more speed and get closer to those exit walls. But meanwhile, we do then look to Benjamin McCluskey, who coming up behind what is now, I do believe, Joe Pinder in the charge towards turn at number 1. That's going to compromise his line somewhat into the opening corner, and the Cadillac driver there having to settle to do another lap where he gets the reference time on the board. But meanwhile, James Mansell making his way on down towards the final corners here. He's currently in purple in sectors 1 and 2 in the LMP2 class, and will know times yet from either other LMP2 teams, whether it be Azz Tech Racing or Azz Tech Racing White. As he heads up towards the timeline, Will Mansell crosses the line, and what's it going to be here for the number 9? It's a 30.935, and we're interested there to see the fact the LMDH is the best part of 7 seconds clear of the rest of the field, but the LMP2s by comparison will so far only 2 seconds clear. But I wonder if there's a lot more time available for the LMP2 class, whether Azz Tech Racing are just widening themselves up, and now this is a true fast lap in the Dallara P217 machine as they make their way into turn 6 and 7. Once he comes on through the second chicane, we'll keep our eyes on that in due course. But meanwhile, speaking of eyes on, we did promise you an on-board lap with Benjamin McCluskey in the NXTGEN Racing BM Cadillac as he makes his way on down towards the final corner. And we'll very shortly we'll get to hear that V8 roaring splendour as he makes his way through the chicane. And well, let's jump on board and listen in. Back there, McCluskey backing off, so it's going to be a lap that we're not going to get to enjoy all of, ladies and gentlemen, but we will get you a lap with the Cadillac later on in this qualifying session. As meanwhile, we see Dylan Mystery take to the circuit for the first time this season. Azz Tech Racing White gets a bit wrong there coming out the pit lane and a lock to the wall, where he's going to carry on round rather than be towed back immediately. But I think there he'll be feeling as though he doesn't want to make any more errors like that. Simple errors, but they're very easy to make. In fact, he takes the escape road there and decides to reset the car. But meanwhile, James Mansell comes on through, and it's a 29.180 for the LMP2 driver as he now winds his way on through the Barge du Senna. And we're at the halfway point of this qualifying session, and well, the times right now, it's looking at quite close in the LMDH class, with McCluskey for NXTGEN Racing BM currently holding the provisional pole by 3.5 tenths over iRace eSports' Nick Clibbins, and then it's NXTGEN Racing Pinky JD a further 2 seconds behind almost, ahead of Azz Tech Racing Black, who are 5 seconds off the P3 and 7.2 seconds off of the pole pace. In the LMP2 class, it's Azz Tech Racing who hold the sole time right now with 29.180 and seems to be in a strong position, where Azz Tech Racing White having recently been towed back to the pit lane and making the way out again. And then we do look to the LMP3 class. And right now it is Stefan Vessels in the CSA Endurance number 27 car, who really is in a class of his own. He is 1.1 seconds faster than anybody else. The Speed 9 eSports are the second place drivers in this provisional qualifying standings. with a NXTGEN Darkside Racing a further 3 tenths behind, or 2.5 tenths to be a bit more precise. And then we can see it is close in that battle with the P2 on the grid, albeit after NXTGEN Darkside Racing, it's only at 1.5 tenths to Quest Autosport LMP3. And then we do have 8 tenths to Ignition Motorsport Spark, followed up by almost 2 seconds to Speedway eSports B, as Vessels goes even faster, a 31.748 as he locks up there into turn number 2. I think that everyone's going to have a bit of a lockjaw moment here for the Sid Paris, and the jaws will drop down the paddock. It is now a 1.7 second pole position advantage to CSA Endurance over Speedline eSports, and then everybody else will be looking at that and thinking, what do we have to do in order to get close? Well, right now CSA Endurance have found a way to make the magic happen, and credit to them. And well, we come to then the GT3 class, and we can see here Alex Meredith in the Porsche 992 GT3, currently your pole sitter for Chemical E Motorsport UK by 2 tenths over SR Technic Endurance, with then a further with 2.7 second gap to FR20 Sim Racing Yellow, with the other 2 GT3 teams in the pit lane. And well, as they make their way on around, everybody right now getting themselves set. And well, it's going to be Chemical E Motorsport UK as they head down towards turns 8 to 9, who look to be really in the driving seat. You have to excuse me for a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and we have just had something come from an administration side with regards to the lobby for this race. It's something I just need to briefly attend to. I'll be back in approximately 30 seconds. But in the meantime, let's ride on board and listen to Alex Meredith in Porsche 992. Very close there to the world champions. The exits the chicane in just perfect time for us to catch that. And will Meredith on a flyer as he crosses the line. He's set a personal best sector 2, and with that he does go even faster at 35.157. But as he makes his way on round towards the end of that lap, and now another one. The thing for the Chemical E Motorsport UK driver is the fact, with 2.5 tenths to 27 SR Technic Endurance, he'll look to try and creep even more time out if he can, because the pressure is still on as he makes his way through the first chicane in towards the second chicane. He goes by turn 5, and well, right now the Chemical E Motorsport UK driver absolutely driving on the very edge of the limit here as he makes his way on through turn number 7. Full throttle quarter exit, heading up towards turns 8 to 9. Well, this is commitment from the Porsche 992 driver. Keep in mind the Porsche is not normally a straight line speed car, but good exits out the chicanes will offset its straight line speed deficit as he comes through turns 8 to 9. Again, really abusing those curves there, the apex curves, and then up towards turn number 10. We're now keeping the car over to left here, but the Porsche have a lot of rotation and work as he brakes as late as possible, but goes a bit too deep. Albeit he will get the car back there, and well, this could work out, taking the V-shape approach. Well, I think he will lose a tenth in the long practice, but the point being now he can carry a lot of speed up towards the final chicane as he heads up towards what he turns at 13 and 14. We're now getting ready to head into the final braking zone, and well, will it be a fast lap this time? He's set a purple at sector 2, breaking his way on in all the way down the third gear, going between the apexes there, and a graze of the wall on the exit. The wall does claim another driver, but not completely, and well, Meredith there crossing the line. It was a very fast lap. It is a 35.093. He's going faster and faster, but I think he'll be kicking himself that contact and missing out what could have been a 34.9 as he makes his way on to the next lap. But definitely they're giving it everything, as meanwhile we can see they're giving it everything to support his fellow CSA Endurance teammates. Elwin at Elvin80 Sykes in the YouTube chat, who says good luck all and let's go CSA Vessels and Shorter. So we look forward to seeing how they get on in class. But meanwhile we look back to Baz Meacham as he makes his way on through turns 1 and 2 and heads up towards the next chicane. as we do see here, Crystal Sport LMP3's Baz Meach making his way out around. Apologies again for the silence there, ladies and gentlemen, but just getting an update with regards to the third Speed9 eSports car of Mark Baker. Unfortunately, there has been a bit of an issue with regards to getting their car registered for the iRacing lobby, and the long story short is we will not be seeing the third Speed9 eSports car now on the grid tonight, so therefore we will be missing one of our LMP3s. It's unfortunate, it does happen. We hope to see them on the grid for the final race of the season, and well, a bit of difficulty there in terms of technical difficulties materialising right at the last moment. And meanwhile, as we do look to Paul Williams making his way all through turn number 5 and up towards 6 and 7, one of the Speed9 eSports cars that is able to make its way on around. Currently still at P2 here, only by a tenth over Crystal Sport LMP3, and as he heads up towards turn number 8 and 9. Right now, it is definitely going to be all about whether he can hold on to this pace to the end of the qualifying session with the CSA Endurance running well of their own. And well, as he makes his way out towards turn number 10, he'll want to be held in the right to be the best of the rest outside of the pole sitter in the class. We do see there Speed9 eSports Williams now making his way down the back straight. We have had a bit of a further update. We may see Mark Baker, in fact, join the car of what is Mike Reader midway through the race. You never know, we may have a surprise a little bit later on. They may be able to work around it and get both drivers in the car, much like what we did see earlier on in the season, particularly at Jerez last time out. So they could, well, in fact, not quite last time out, as Reader was not able to make it. It was Baker who was driving the car, but the point being they may be sharing the machine. We'll have to wait and see. But as our drivers now continue to wind their way into the final 5 minutes of this qualifying session, and well, not too much time left. The key points being now for all the drivers looking to try and get themselves set up for the ultimate final lap. And well, in the pit lane is Benjamin McCluskey, your current overall pole sitter in the LMDH class as well, and on 23.328, I think he feels so he's got the job done. But meanwhile, in the battle for P3 in the LMDH class, it could not be closer, with only 44,000 separated. NXTGEN Racing at Pinky JD from Azz Tech Racing Black, and well, as we do see the Cadillac here of Pit making its way across the timeline and into another lap. Let's jump on board and take you on around as he locks up into turn 1, but coming through Virage du Sena, looks like he picks it up and picks it together once again as he makes way towards turn number 3 and 4. And so fast up through the gearbox, he heads into the right and to left, and you see there Pit fighting with the steering wheel as he uses all the exit room. They're getting sensationally close to the wall through turn number 5, flat out, going into the brakes for 6 and 7, and these corners cut so fast, but he goes a bit deep there down the first gear, and the understeer catches him out as he now makes way through, and Pit there deciding to cool down the lap and recharge the battery as much as he can. So it'll be Pit who goes on to another lap shortly, and well, just misses braking point going into the second chicane by the best part of what must have been about 5 meters, if that. And well, that was the difference between him getting a fly that could have moved him into P3 versus Indian having to reset and go for another lap. You can see him there shaking the car from side to side, and therefore trying to get as much tyre temperature into the car and get himself on prime for what will be potentially a final qualifying lap of today. Although I think he'll be able to squeeze 2 more laps in, given the lap time here for the MDHs is just under 1.5 minutes. But the point being that time is running out here. He's got to try and go for it before the timer is all said and done, and we see that checkered flag come out. As he makes his way on down the back straight, McCluskey still in the pit lane, not showing any signs of moving. And McCluskey feels as though he's got it done. And well, is that overconfidence or is it well-placed confidence? We'll find out soon enough. But meanwhile, the Azz Tech Racing Black Cadillac goes on to another lap here, and as it does, we ride on board once again as Pit takes us around. Taking on to the brakes here, all the way down the gearbox to second gear, and this time gets it wrong on the exit of turn number 1, and for Pit it is a frustrating end to qualifying. It seems to be cursed whenever we want to ride on board where Cadillac either goes back into the pits immediately or makes error. Pit's going to make his way on out, but he's going to do it very quickly if he wants to get a final lap in. Remember, we do have overtime rules in effect which state that when the clock strikes 25 minutes, any drivers who are on the lap are permitted to finish the lap But whilst all this is happening, meanwhile, we can give you an update to say that Paul Williams has been able to improve his LMP3 P2 lap now up to what is a 32.77. That puts in the best part of 1.4 seconds of a CSA Endurance in pole, piloted by Stefan Vessels. But the point also being that there's now 6 attempts, in fact it's almost 8 attempts now between Speedline eSports and P3 in the form of Crest Autosport LMP3. So therefore the LMP3 class now has a top 2 that have separated themselves from each other and the rest of the field, and everyone else now fighting to be on that second row of the grid, it would seem. A little bit of next gen at Dark Side Racing. Mark Sykes currently in the pit lane, and well, I do believe might read that Joe Pinder, Fullway Speedline in the Motorsport Spark respectively, out on circuit at the moment, and also Baz Meacham out there. He's going towards the end of the lap. Can he find a way to improve here, or will he not? He's down in sectors 1 and 2, improves in sector 3, but what will it be? The Crest Autosport LMP3 driver will in the end. It's not an improvement. He'll have one more lap available to him. He'll just squeeze in at one way. He won't quite get another one in after that. He will run out of time, but right now he's going to give it everything here as he makes way into turns 3 and 4. Through the right to left he goes. As we can tell in the GT3 class, qualifying has completed. We're coming to eMotorsport UK taking pole position on 34.887. SR Technic Endurance will be P2 5 tenths behind, and FR20 Sim Racing Yellow at a further is 2.7 seconds behind P3. Well, it looks like all the GT3 teams now investing their attention into the race and setting up the car for success there. In the LMP2 class, Azz Tech Racing are ahead of Azz Tech Racing White for the best part of almost 7 seconds there. So that is LMP2 qualifying complete. And well, now it all comes down to LMP3 qualifying with only Baz Meacham out on circuit with the time remaining there. Everyone else is in the pit lane or off the pit lane and into the exterior paddock. But meanwhile, in the LMDH class, we've got 3 out of our 4 drivers out on circuit at the moment. And then, well, we do have what is Jamie Dory who's just crossed the line. He's gone to P3 on what is a 24.46. Still the best part of what is there. However, 8 tenths down on iRace eSports, but now giving himself a safety net and 9 tenths to Azz Tech Racing Black, and that may just give him a bit more comfort going into the race. Perhaps he'll have an ace up his sleeve when it comes to strategy. But meanwhile, heading towards the end of the qualifying lap as he just misses the exit wall there. He's on a personal best. He's improved in sectors 1 and 2. What can Meacham do is he crosses the line. He's got quite a gap to beat if he wants to go P2. And in the end, he does improve by 2 tenths to 33.262. But it's not enough to get onto that front row of the LMP3 grid. So it will be CSA Endurance who take pole in the LMP3 class, and the Speedline eSports and Crest Autosport LMP3 will start P3 in class. But all of our other class drivers have made their way into the pits already, ladies and gentlemen. Qualifying is complete, so it will be in the LMDH class. Next Gen Racing BM will take pole position with Benjamin McCluskey behind the wheel. LMP2 class will be Azz Tech Racing, that's piloted by James Massersgal. CSA Endurance, it will be LMP3 class and champions who'll be there on the pole position slot, and well, with it will be Stefan Vessels who takes that pole. And then at GT3 class will be Chemical E Motorsport. They'll be in the position there to take what will be at the leading run into turn number 1. And well, we look forward to seeing how the Britain and the British team get on there versus SR Technic Endurance. But that's qualifying complete, and now we are only waiting moments away to go to the grid for our 4th race of the season. And well, we may only have 15 cars out on the grid, but what we lack in quantity, we definitely have some stellar quality here today. But who will prove themselves to be the creme of the creme, the crop of the crop, and come out on top after 2 hours of racing? Well, let's find out. As we still await the transition here to make our way into what is the race grid formation. We do have a couple of cars just sat in the pit lane currently, but rest assured they will be making the transition within the next couple of minutes. One little bit of trivia with regards to what is the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve from a Formula 1 perspective, and we keep referring to Formula 1 as it's really where this circuit established its name in the motorsporting world. This is home to what's been the longest Formula 1 Grand Prix, spanning at 4 hours, the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix, but we'll come back to more on that later. The grid is now being set, and this is how they line up for our 4th race of the season. Benjamin McCluskey takes pole position overall in the LMDH class for Next Gen Racing at BM. Joined on the front row by iRace eSports, piloted by Nick Clivins, and they'll be on row number 2 to complete our LMDH class. Jamie Dory for Next Gen Racing Pinky JD. and Azz Tech Racing at Black's Jake Pitt. On row number 3, we have our sole, well, in fact, our two LMP2 teams, albeit both represented by the sole major team at Azz Tech Racing, and it will be the core Azz Tech Racing machine piloted with James Smaskerscow that will then be followed up by Dylan Mystery in the Azz Tech Racing White machine. And on row number 4 on the grid, we will have what is our LMP3s. They start with pole sitter Stefan Vessels of CSA Endurance, and he'll be then followed up by Paul Williams of Speed9 eSports. Completing the top 10, it's Baz Meacham for Crest Autosport LMP3, and alongside it will be NXTGEN Darkside Racing, piloted by Mark Sykes. Outside the top 10 overall, starting on the 6th row of the grid, it'll be Mike Reedner for Speed9 eSports B, and then Joe Pinder for Ignium Motorsport Spark. And as we make our way towards the very end of the grid, then going down to our GT3 positions, the GT3 pole sitter starting P13 on row number 7, it'll be Kemi Torti Motorsport UK, followed up by SR Technic Endurance being piloted there by Sergio Vieira, and then on the final row of the grid, P15 last but not least on row number 8, it'll be FR20 Sim Racing Yeo's Craig Tillerston. The Briton now having a difficult qualifying session, but rest assured he'll look to bounce back in the race like only he knows how to do so. But as they get ready to go racing, ladies and gentlemen, most of our field now is set, and as they are all ready to go, the whole grid is there. We are now in the throes of the formation lap, albeit it is a short formation lap here, with the formation getting underway and coming out of the final hairpin and going down the Casino straight. So they haven't got long to warm up the tyres, and well, by the time they make the way in towards turn number 1, the tyres will still be quite cold, particularly in those prototypes, and also the brakes as well will be freezing cold, and therefore we could see some lockups into turns at 1 and 2, but who will survive those and onwards on the open lap? Well, we'll shortly find out, as we can see the LMDHs already started to give themselves a bit of space in the LMP2s, and as the rest of the field now gradually starts to spread itself out here, the LMP2s are just a little bit further up the road from the LMP3s, and the GT3s, the best part of what is at 3 to 4 seconds back. The field is all set. The safety car will make its way into the pit lane, and it's Benjamin McCluskey to take us to the green for 2 hours of racing here in Montreal. Lights out and away we go for 2 hours of racing here in Montreal as our LMDH is charged down towards turn number 1 as they make their way into the braking zone. It's going to be Dory on the inside of Clemens side by side there, and they both go around and get entangled together. Meanwhile, as they spin about, we look into the LMP3 class, and it is Paul Williams who gets the better start out of the LMP3s by comparison as Vessels falls back there. Mark Sykes immediately behind him, jumps ahead of Baz Meacham, and also Joe Pinder gaining some ground as they make their way out of the right-hander at turn at number 2. But a dramatic start in the LMDH class. We couldn't have thought that was going to happen, and we've already had a tow to the pits for NXTGEN Racing Peaky JD due to damage picked up, and what an unfortunate start to their race, and literally the instant in lap 1 it turns at 1 and 2. But meanwhile, as we do look at our LMP3s here, well, there's been plenty of change of foot in the LMP3 class, and meanwhile in what is the GT3 class, well, it has stayed as is. Kemi Torti Motorsport UK's Alex Meredith getting away strongly ahead of Sergio Vera for SR Technic Endurance, and Craig Tillerston for FR20 Sim Racing Yellow. He's further 1.4 seconds behind. As they make their way down towards turns 8 to 9, we look from them back up to what is the LMP3 class. Well, here is Paul Williams making his way up towards the turn 10 hairpin for the first time of asking, with Vessels edging closer here and getting ready to look for a move, potentially under braking into the chicane. Williams goes a little bit deep there, and Pinder comes into contact with Mark Sykes, who's elbowed clearly wide, almost to the wall there, coming out to the hairpin, and with that, it does seem as though that bit of contact may have upset the 666 machine in terms of the setup of the car and also the driver. As they make their way down the back straight, we'll have to wait and see what damage has been made to that car. The Legia P320 not being the sturdiest of cars in terms of the fact these cars are not made to take a beating, then made the aerodynamic refinement and punching a good quality hole through the air in front of them. And well, as he makes his way up towards turn number 1, Sykes down a P5 in the LMP3 class, but knowing there's a long way to go. Indeed, anything can happen before it's all said and done. But meanwhile, we have an update to say the NXTGEN Racing Peaky JD team have actually had to retire the car after that open lap instant. A disastrous start to the race in what is not even at 2 minutes complete of a 2 hour. And well, as we do look to Mike Reedner at the back here of what is the charge of the LMP3s, the Speed9 eSports B driver, carrying on his way as he makes his way through turn at number 5. Well, coming up towards turns at 6 and 7 now, and looking to try and go on the charge as much as he can. But certainly driver in 9 has a bit of space and time to do so. But meanwhile, wasting no time here, it's 7 Vessels on the inside for the lead of the MP3 class versus Speedline eSports is Paul Williams. And Vessels there making the move count as he goes into the turn 8-9 chicane. The next in out now, Vessels into lead once again, and Williams meanwhile looking behind. And I wonder whether he might start to fall away a little bit based on what we saw in terms of the qualifying pace. As they make the way out to turn number 10, we ride on board and look back from the rear of Vessels' car, and on the exit of the corner you can see that gap already becoming more pronounced. A 10th gain now, corner exit alone, and as they make the way down the back straight, we'll see the Speedline eSports car gradually inch closer in the tow, but not really gaining too much here, just gaining 100 for 200s by the end of it. And as they make the way through the Wall of Champions chicane this time, Williams again very close to the wall. Meanwhile, CSA Endurance Vessels feel a lot more comfortable with the car, and I think that is how the gap is now going to go. It's going to gradually open up as these laps start to accumulate. But meanwhile, Alex Meredith into the pit lane early here for coming to eMotorsport UK. What's gone wrong with the car? Because this is an unexpected pit stop, it must be said. And the only thing I can imagine is perhaps they picked up some significant damage on the car, and that's led to them to come in and take an emergency pit stop. Well, whilst they've come into the pits, meanwhile Craig Tillotson will go on through into P2 for FR20 Sim Racing Yellow in the GT3s, and SR Technic Endurance will take the lead of this race, and well, they will be pleased to take the lead, but they'll be curious as to what's happened to the Porsche 992. But as we do make our way now to lap number 3 of racing across our classes, we take a look back at the open lap, in particular the race started with the instant going into turn number 1 for what was Nick Clemens and Jamie Dory. As they made the way under braking into the corner, Clemens on the outside to inside, Dory just losing the rear of the car, and in the rear of his car catching at the side of the iRace eSports car, and the 2 BMW drivers going on around. And meanwhile, oh goodness me, and Clemens are rejoining into the path of what was Dylan Mystery, who had to take evasive action. And with the Azz Tech Racing driver with that lockup, he will have put the front tyres quite significantly, and that's not going to make him too pleased with that. But also, what happened at the start with regards to the battle in the LMP3 class, we take another look back here between Stefan Vessels and Paul Williams, and as they got underway, well, Williams was on the inside into the chicane, and we were in green flag racing as they went their way on through, and Vessels in the end taking a very subjugated start there, just gradually taking his time, being on such a tight line and cold tyres, didn't want to spin the car up, and understandable then, that's why he lost the place. And we could say at the same there for Baz Beecham lose out, given the relatively slow starting position up for what was the LMP3s, but in return a bit of nice manoeuvring there between Meacham and Joe Pinder, with Pinder defending one to the Raj Du centre, and that was the difference between them as they made the way up towards turn number 3. Meanwhile, we return it to your live pictures now, and as we do, we have had a further incident for Dylan Mystery, which we'll try and get an update on in due course. That's happened off camera quite recently, and with FR20 Sim Racing yellow car of Craig Tillotson setting the fastest GT3 class lap of the race on that previous lap on what was a 38.98, so definitely delivering some lap time out there now. But meanwhile, what exactly happened to Dylan Mystery? Well, here is a replay. As we can see the Azz Tech Racing White car making its way down towards the turn 10 hairpin, going onto the brakes, and as it does, just locks up there, and the car snatches on what is the rear left brake in particular, having to get the car to stop after meandering onto the grass, and then making its way back onto the tarmac, just resetting the car and getting itself comfortable with it once again. But definitely a nasty start to the race for the 390 car, as we will return to your live pictures. And as we do, we look here to the battle for P4 in the LMP3 class between Baz Beecham and Mark Sykes, as they make the way down the back straight and up towards turns 13 and 14. Now as they charge the way on down, we are going to try and get an update on what exactly has happened to Alex Meredith, but we haven't quite got any information regards to that, so I presume it would be contact with a wall somewhere, and perhaps that's led to what is a orange and black flag for the standard of the car. But meanwhile here, Sykes looking for the move every which way with the back of Baz Beecham. We jump on board here with the 666 NXTGEN Darkside Racing car as he gets very close to move there to Raj Dusson, in fact close enough to almost tap the rear of the car in front. The Crystal Sport LMD3 holds on for now as they make the way towards turns 3 and 4. Now winding the way on through, Sykes I think feels like he's got the pace to try and make this move count, but the problem is he needs to pick the right place in order to make the overtake. It's early at stages in the race, but he'll want to try and go for the podium here today. I think it feels like he's a bit too far off the pace of the top two, but in Motorsport Spark, definitely a valid target if we use qualifying as our reference data, and the Sykes they're going a bit sideways coming out the second chicane. Really eager to get the power on down. He's got to be careful of that, particularly when this car starts to run out of fuel, gets light and also warm tyres. You see a lock up there for the Crest Autosport LMP3. All these two are right now pushing to their utmost. It looks as though Azz Beecham in front is finally settling down and into a rhythm here as they make their way in towards the turn 10 hairpin. Through the right hand they go, and as they exit, you see both drivers, they're going a bit deeply on the apex curve and opting to take a deep exit line. And well, what does that give them in turn? It gives them plenty of space to play with in terms of getting back into the full throttle. And as they head up towards the turns 13 and 14 in towards the chicane here, gap now open up to almost 7 attempts between what is an NXTGEN Darkside Racing Crest Motorsport LMP3, albeit there it is going to be the latter, the chasing team that we're riding on board with, as the better run through the chicane. As we look to the exterior pictures, and they make their way on to another lap. Well, Darkside Racing right now definitely getting close here. Both teams setting a personal best, but Crystal also having the better lap out the two. They're coming on for the Raj du Senna. This is where Sykes is just that much faster through the opening couple of corners and also towards the end of the lap. It's in the middle portion of the lap, which is where Crystal Autosport LMP3 are able to pull away by comparison. So it's a bit of give to take here. It's an interesting conundrum, and well, the driver right now will be worried about this conundrum rearing its ugly head as it inches closer and closer to it. Is Joe Pinder, the number 26 Ignition Motorsport Spark driver, who right now has got his head down, there's no doubt about that, and focusing on doing what he can in order to be able to try and bring home this podium. Albeit we're not quite 10 minutes into this race yet, but he's got a long way to go. But the point being here, he'll want to try and give himself a little bit more of a gap, given that there's only 1.5 seconds to the two drivers behind. And when they get close, we can see a very feisty freeway battle for that third place spot in the early stages of this race. But as they make their way into the turn 10 hairpin, we look to your race leader here, Benjamin McCluskey, who's coming up behind another GT3, coming up behind the GT3 class leader of SR Technic Endurance here. It's put a lap on them, and the Irishman there makes his way on the inside into the kink that runs into turn number 10, and will clears the traffic before it becomes an issue into the braking zone. And McCluskey right now pulling away by 7 seconds over fellow Cadillac Jake Pitt. And this is a power circuit, and Cadillac normally more associated with top end speed based on the current balance performance that we have seen this far season. And as he makes his way up towards turn number 13 now, will Pitt, well, he's 10 seconds clear of this man from iRace eSports and Nick Clibbins. And Clibbins right now battling against the current here to try and find a way to close that gap up as soon as possible. I think it's going to be quite an effort required, albeit last lap Clibbins was the fastest of the three of them, and as they made their way on to this next lap was the 25.4 for NXTGEN Racing BM. Meanwhile for Azz Tech Racing Black it is what is a 26.7, and then for iRace eSports by comparison on their recovery here after the contact with NXTGEN Racing Pinky JD in lap number 1. For iRace eSports is a 25.387, so they are the fastest out there in the LMDH class, but they've got some way to go to recover, with there being a 9-second gap to the second place team and a further 8.5 seconds to the race leaders. As we say hello there to John Meredith in the YouTube chat, so wishing on son Alex Meredith all the best of luck. Well, again, we're not quite sure what happened to the number 96 at the start, other than the fact he had to take a pit stop right at the end of the opening 2 laps, and was Meredith makes his way one towards the next lap. The only other thought process here would be, as they did have an extended pit time of what was 41.25 seconds stationary, so I wonder whether they've decided to take an early fuel stop, and perhaps they loaded the car quite light on fuel at the start of the race here to try and change up their strategy. Now, strategy-wise, given the fact this is now a 2-hour race, 120 minutes rather than 160 minutes, well, we have typically seen what is a 2 to 3 stop for the LMP3 and the GT3 class, and I think Meredith here perhaps feeling as though with that early pit stop he may be able to remove a pit stop later in the race if he really manages this race well and gives himself plenty of track space to work with. We'll have to wait and see what those lap times look like for the Briton in order for him to be able to make that strategy work. But meanwhile, as he makes his way up towards turns 8 and 9, we look back to the battle for P4 in the LMP3 class between Beecham and Sykes, the Crest Autosport LMP3 team. Still ahead of NXTGEN at Darkside Racing as they head on through turn number 5. And will Beecham here keeping his head down, and will close that gap up to Ignition Motorsport Spark. It's now down to within the second for a brief moment. Will be Beecham making a bit of a ham sandwich of the second chicane at turns 5, 6 and 7. And as they make the way up to turns 8 and 9, with NXTGEN Racing at BM, the overall race leader that makes his way up the inside there and interweaves his way into the traffic, and in doing so I think we'll feel as though it's got the job done quite nicely as it clears the trio of LMP3s. And as they head down towards the hairpin, well, Pinder's lost out quite considerably here, and all three of them now separated by only a second from the leader to the rear car as we ride on board and look back from the rear of Joe Pinder in the Evening Motorsports Park. As they make the way down the back straight, down the Casino straight, and better exit out the hairpin compared to his rivals. And I did think that Sykes potentially took a bit of a look at what was there, the car of Mitchell as they made the way out of the hairpin, but still nothing between as they head onto the brakes. Fastest lap in the LMP3 class, just upgraded to a 32.671 from CSA Jerez, and Stefan Vessels continued to fly at the front of the field, lapping on average 1.5 seconds faster than the rest of his peers and contemporaries as they made the way on to the next lap. And Mitchell under a lot of pressure right now to hold on as Sykes trying to probe and trying to poke his way in for the move here. And I think Mark Sykes feeling as though he's got the pace to really try and push that P3. Well, he may have the pace, but he's got to pass. And catching is one thing, but passing is another, as the late great Murray Walker once said. As they head through turn at number 5. Brilliant race between these cars right now as they head in towards another braking zone. And exiting the second chicane. Well, they're coming to the end of the opening 15 minutes of this race, and they'll definitely now be starting to think just as much about strategy as they will about overtakes. Well, I think more will be in the Motorsport Spark in particular. They'll be worried about the cars coming up behind. And I think Sykes behind them has the options, but meanwhile, Mitchell getting very close there into the turn at 8-9 chicane. They made the way towards turn at number 10, where it's going to be there. I think Meacham having to defend slightly. In fact, Sykes looks up the inside, it goes all in the brakes. Meacham gives him the space, but there's contact. They clear the apex, and both cars into the barrier there. And what I think that could be both of them being towed to the pits, particularly for NXTGEN Dark Side Racing, as the two cars are side by side. They're trying to get themselves back up to speed. Rear wing missing from the Cresta Autosport LMP3 that goes around on the grass, and Sykes meanwhile just trying to get the car reset. But I think that could be a very gradual limp home to the pit lane, and the same for Meacham as they both try to get the cars back together. But a dramatic moment there for the two LMP3 competitors, and well, we've got a replay coming up as to exactly what happened. Making the way down into the braking zone, we look back from the rear of Meacham's car here, and under braking leaves the door open, turns across, and as he does, he finds the nose of Sykes. Now, was there enough space is the big question for Sykes to really dream of making the move. When we see that now from Mark Sykes' perspective inside the car, and as he made his way into the braking zone, we're taking a look up the inside here, and well, I think he'll feel as though he perhaps needed to back out slightly more. It was very nip and tuck, but I think there it may have been Sykes just having his nose in a little bit too much, and we'll Meacham in, turning in and just collecting the nose of Sykes' car. The two of them became joined together, and that was the end of the battle, and both cars into the pit lane for fast repair. And I wouldn't be surprised as well if they're both going for an early pit stop in terms of taking a refill of the fuel tank, and also perhaps some new tyres as well, just to give themselves a fresh life going into the next part of the race. But meanwhile, return to your live pictures here, ladies and gentlemen. We'll look to your overall race leader as an NXTGEN Racing BM Cadillac makes its way onto lap number 12. It's Benjamin McCluskey, and as the Irishman makes his way into left and to right onto the brakes he goes. A bit of a lock-up just in front, and that in fact is James Smazgazgal. Well, that's not in front. We had a lock-up from somebody at turns 1 and 2, but Smazgazgal's gone around there, and that is, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, turns 6 and 7. The LMP2 car getting it very wrong. And what happened to Azz Tech Racing at number 9? Well, we take a look back and find out. Coming out of turns 3 and 4 through 5, full throttle here, and will goes a bit wide, but doesn't really unsettle the car. And then under braking, the car just snaps round. And I think that might have been a brief lockup of the rear brakes, and then suddenly disengaging from the lockup and just kicking at the car around. Also, there was a very sharp direction change in the car, with the fact they ran very wide coming through 5. Didn't quite go onto the grass, but the point being they suddenly had to get the car over to the right to set up the braking zone for the turn 6 entry point. And with that, I think that direction change may have just upset the momentum and the rhythm of the car, and in turn that's what led to the spin. As we return to your live pictures, meanwhile in to the pit lane comes iRace eSports here. Nick Clemens in, and well, this is a first pit stop for them very early in the day, deciding to come from P2 in the LMDH class, and well, in doing so, a 24.3 stationary stop. In terms of the number of seconds they spent in the pit lane stationary, 54 seconds in total from end to end of pit lane entry through the pit lane exit. And what is their plan versus NXTGEN Racing BM? Well, given the fact they pitted slightly earlier than we'd expect, perhaps they're working it out versus the 120-minute race timer now and wondering whether they can try and have an early pit stop, give themselves plenty of clear space on track, and then opt to try and hunt down NXTGEN Racing BM with a longer second stint, where it will be a gamble here. All the teams will have to adapt to the fact they've become quite established in terms of the approach in the races over the 160-minute races that we have previously seen, with the LMDHs have normally made 4 stops. Meanwhile, in the LMP2 class, it has been in the region of 3 to 4 stops. In the LMP3s, it has been 2 to 3 stops, and the same for the GT3s. But perhaps now they're trying to think about axing out a pit stop or 2 here, and perhaps Clemens to sign a bit early in order to achieve that ambition. Well, as he makes his way on down the back straight. Meanwhile, we do look to your race leader in the LMDH class of Benjamin McCluskey as he makes his way on through turn at number 10, and will all the cards falling into his favour right now, and just managing this race comfortably as Jake Pitt, meanwhile, in at P2. The Azz Tech Racing black car heading up towards what is turn at number 10, and we have to keep in mind with regards to clearance, having made 1 pit stop after that early contact with Jamie Dorey. Well, right now he finds himself a lot further down, but Jake Pitt P2 on strategy currently, and also P2 in class in terms of track position, and the 660 car here continuing to not quite show the pace that was in for NXTGEN Racing BM as they set a new fastest lap of the race in the LMDH class of a 24.5 at 7.1, but Pitt still holding his own here and trading lap time versus Clemens from iRace eSports, and that could be pivotal for later on in the race in terms of how the two teams gradually come together. As we look from them, we look to the GT3 class, and here is SR Technic Endurance, and Sergio Vieira there makes his way down towards turn number 10. As he charges way on down and lets it on through the LMDH of iRace eSports, and right now SR Technic in the sole BMW M4 GT3 here today, enjoying a strong lead to this race by a gap of what is 47 seconds. And well, speaking of 47 seconds back, here is the battle for P2 in the GT3 class with what is there Alex Meredith looking around the outside to inside as they go onto the brakes for the turn 6 chicane, and as they do, it will be coming to Evo as well. The inside, a key pass there, past the F20 Sim Racing Ferrari 488 Evo, and will Meredith on his way now, and I think conscious of the fact that he needs to try and hunt down that gap versus SR Technic Endurance with that premature pit stop. I think definitely costing them in terms of their race time, and well, as Meredith makes his way on through there, heading in towards turn at number 10. Doing everything he can to take lap time out to his rivals as quickly as possible. But meanwhile, behind, Craig Tillotson with some significant damage on the front of that Ferrari, and well, I think they did pick up damage quite early on in this race. We are going to try and get an update as to what happened to their car. In fact, we do have a replay, and here it is. This was coming into turn 6 and 7, clear 6, okay, turn 7 goes fine at first. On the exit, however, the rear of the car just stepping loose there, and as they got the power down, trying to control it with a counter steer, but unstuck the car even more. It went to the grass on the inside and into the outside barrier, and that explains why we do have a crumpled front bumper for the number 34 Ferrari, and also that now also a crumpled rear bumper, it would seem, as they had to get the car turned on around. As we look back to live pictures, 20 minutes of this race complete, still another 100 minutes to go here, plenty of time in terms of racing still available, and with that our drivers pressing on here. We've only had one retirement so far in the form of a NXTGEN Racing Pinky JD with an unfortunate incident on lap number 1, bringing the race to a close before they can even turn at 2 corners. And well, as we do look to our 3rd place GT3 right now, we then look back up the field very shortly. But Craig Tillotson may be last at the moment in the GT3 class. We know he's normally Mr. Consistent, and therefore he's just got to take it lap by lap. You never know what could happen until the very end. Indeed, endurance racing is just as much about commitment and staying in it to win it as it is with regards to being the outright fastest in terms of 1 lap pace, and that's why endurance racing creates a different breed of driver. But as he makes his way on through towards the end of this lap, meanwhile we look back up to your LMP2 leaders of James Smansky, the Azz Tech Racing driver here, heading down towards turns 1 and 2. And as he comes through it left into right, just keeping it nice and smooth between the apexes and upwards towards turns 3 and 4 he goes. Will be a little bit of wobble there on the power on the exit of the corner, and well, I do think there for Smansky, it may have been a bit of a moment where he's got the power on down, albeit the tyres now feeling a little bit warm, on top of that car feeling quite light on fuel, and putting the 2 and 2 together, therefore making that LMP2 at Dallara P217 a bit a less stable car by comparison with its previous state, as he heads out of what is their turn number 7 down towards 8-9, carrying his momentum in towards the next pair of corners, and we're doing everything right thus far. As he heads towards the hairpin very shortly, we have an advantage now of 2 laps over Azz Tech Racing White, with Dylan Bishop being involved in a couple of incidents over the last few laps that have definitely cost them quite dear with this race right now. In a bit of a quiet stage, things have calmed down somewhat. Indeed, all the race at this time now more centred, I think, on what is the strategy first and foremost. As we do see McCluskey making his way out turn at number 14, heading down towards turn number 1. The NXTGEN Racing BM driver here. He'll be thinking about the fact that Clemens has taken a very early pit stop, and I wouldn't be surprised also doing some repair work to the car as part of that pit stop. But now we'll get to see the potential pace come from Clemens as McCluskey on that last lap, a 24.816. We do have some time to wait before we see the lap from Clemens, with Pitt making his way across the line now, and here is Jake Pitt. So versus McCluskey's 24.82, it is going to be a 26.773 for Azz Tech Racing Black. So therefore, Pitt and the Cadillac team are falling away compared to their Cadillac rivals, but Clemens then making his way up towards the turn at 10 hairpin. As he heads down into the braking zone here with the iRace eSports driver right now, I think thinking about the long term here and what he's able to do in order to try and bring that gap down. But it's going to be a Herculean effort with regards to trying and bring that gap down, given the fact that a whole minute and 9 seconds between himself and the race leader, albeit a pit stop in hand currently with regards to the number served after only 11 laps of racing. But definitely an interesting strategy for the number 13 driver as he makes his way up towards turn number 1. In terms of laps, well, that last lap for iRace eSports was a 25.51, albeit they've got heavy fuel in the car, but they do lose 7 tenths to McCluskey. So therefore, NXTGEN Racing BM definitely putting in the times right now. As meanwhile, into the pits is NXTGEN Darkside Racing. They've come in once again here, and well, in fact, it may be an early retirement for the LMP3 team. In fact, we have confirmation they have had to retire from the race. They have been involved in another incident, and that has been the end of the car, and here is the incident. So going down towards turn number 1, heading towards the braking zone here for the Raj Dusenna. As they came through, plenty of apex curve taken, unsettles the rear of the car, and then in the drop off the curve, rolling the car to the grass in the end to get it off of the racing line. And with the car going around on the grass, trying to get it turned, eventually turning it on around. For the 666 driver, they're definitely having some misfortune early on. If that was the incident that ended their race, well, they've come into the pits after that from what we're hearing, and here's a suspension issue with the car that they're not quite able to fix. So therefore, unfortunately, for NXTGEN at Darkside Racing. But meanwhile, Azz making his way onwards on our live pictures in P5 in the LMP3 class. The last of the LMP3 runners currently, as meanwhile at the very front of the LMP3 class, it's another fastest lap for CSA Endurance, now a 32.01 for Stefan Vessels, and the man is absolutely possessed to deliver and dominate here with a gap now of 32.1 seconds over Speed9 Esports' Paul Williams, and will carry on his way. As meanwhile in P3 in the LMP3 class, Mike Riedner, the German driver here, enjoying a very strong start to the race thus far. He's kept it calm, kept his cool, and kept it consistent, and will being rewarded for it in the fact that he is running in the final of the podium places, with Joe Pinder having to come into the pit lane on lap number 12, and we suspect that may have been due to a degree of an incident, and the same for Baz Meacham with that contact with Mark Sykes. Well, right now, those who avoid the incident are definitely gaining a lot of time, as is the nature of the racing. As Riedner heads in turns 3 and 4, through the right into left he goes. Meanwhile, we do look to what is your GT3 class, in particular back to SR Technic Endurance, your GT3 class leaders. And as the BMW M4 makes its way up towards turn number 1, SR Technic Endurance here enjoying a very strong run thus far as they head on around and up towards what is their turn number 3 very shortly. And will right now really just embedding themselves into this race for the long haul. And as he heads on through turns 3 and 4, a little bit of further trivia with regards to this circuit, ladies and gentlemen. The circuit, as it's now known as Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, was not always known as that. Indeed, it opened on a very different name, known as the Notre Dame Circuit. And the reason for that is based in what is the Parc Jean Drapeau, but in particular on the island of Notre Dame Island within the city of Montreal in Quebec. So therefore, that's why it was known as the Notre Dame Circuit when it did open all the way back in October of 1978. But the circuit has been here in a long time, and it was renamed understandably in honour of the hometown hero. And well, with the renaming of the circuit eventually, that's what led to it taking its current guise. Indeed, the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve name has stuck with the circuit for a long time. Indeed, many don't know that it was originally known as the Notre Dame circuit. But as we do see it there, making his way up towards turns 13 and 14, charging on down and in towards the braking zone here of the final chicane once again. Definitely a very popular circuit, and one that's very easy to witness racing at, with plenty of grandstands laid out and right towards the city centre of Montreal. But as he heads onwards towards another lap, he won't be thinking about all the trivia behind the circuit. The area will be only thinking about one or two things. The first one being nailing every braking zone, and the other one is what is the strategy and what do we need to do in order to get this done right. When he makes his way on to another lap, we then look to your second place GT3 team coming to eMotorsport UK, as piloted by Alex Meredith, and the number 96 driver here breaking away from FR20 Sim Racing Yellow's Craig Tillotson now by 10 seconds, and the point being Alex Meredith here now on a chance to try and bring down that gap to SR Technic Endurance. The gap right now swinging the other way, in fact, and that SR Technic Endurance on average open that gap up by half a second a lap. But Meredith, we have to keep in mind, may have a bit more fuel in the car, and therefore that could be the differential. As they charged away up towards what is their turn number one, heading into the braking zone. All right, now Meredith here doing everything he can in order to make up the lost time from that early pit stop. Again, we'll have to wait and see what that time does look like, as meanwhile leaving the pit lane very short is their Stefan Vessel making his way on around. Our cameraman's attention is more on this car in the form of Dylan Mystery, as the Azz Tech Racing White LMP2 makes his way out of the pit lane there. I think having to check if the brakes are working, going quite slowly out the pit lane, and every sort of testing the brakes. The 390 driver here just trying to see if they've been able to resolve an issue in the car, because they have now been into the pit lane the best part of 2 times, and also been involved in a couple of incidents. Therefore, the 390 car definitely not seeing the happiest of days so far, but still plenty of time to go. It makes its way on through turn 5 and up towards 6, just as Class LMP2 leader James Mansfield for Azz Tech Racing makes the way on through it, and now puts Mystery 4 laps down. But as they head up towards turns 8 and 9, this circuit, not just a circuit where Formula 1 races at, indeed it has been raced at by a number of other classes of machinery, including what is GT3s, also at GT1s, and on top of that as well, Le Mans style endurance cars from the old Group C category. So a whole mix of machines have raced around here over the course of its history, and therefore whilst it is well synonymous with Formula 1 racing, with the fact that Formula 1 comes here year in year out, every so often we do get to see other machines that take on this wonderful circuit, and well, all the way up to the likes of kart as well. And well, what a presence that would be to have kart racing around here. But indeed, as we do continue to see our various classes of machinery racing on around the circuit right now, we do look to your race leader overall once again, Benjamin McCluskey, and the NXTGEN Racing driver here, just carrying on happily as he makes his way down towards turns 8 and 9. As he comes up through the right into left in the Cadillac. Now towards turn number 10, a little bit of trivia on the Cadillac, making it its debut in the world of LMDH class racing this year. Indeed, a hotly anticipated machine, and also made its debut in the 24-hour of Le Mans as the centenary this year in 2023. And well, Cadillac finishing in what was all 3 of their cars, one car finishing 3rd on the podium and one behind it in 4th, and therefore surviving the race, even though the red Cadillac in particular having a nightmare race at Le Mans, and will still be able to survive, and a good start to the endurance career of West Cadillac in the guise of GM Motors, all racing together under the American branding. And well, as number 28 driver makes his way into the braking zone for turn number 1, definitely feeling as though right now the car is giving him everything he needs in order to carry on here, and those lap times just continuing to come in at 24.721 that time around. But meanwhile, for Jake Peters, he makes his way in the other Cadillac on the grid in towards the final 2 corners, where he in fact decides not to cross the start-finish line, but come into the pits instead. So Pitt here for his first pit stop as he makes his way on down pit row. Well, what's it going to be, and where's it going to put him? Keep in mind, iRace eSports are currently at turns 8 and 9. Here we do look to the number 8 car of Nick Clemens, who makes his way up towards turn number 10. 32 minutes into this race, and we are, I think it's now seeing our first expected scheduled pit stops in the LMDH cars, and I reckon they'll most likely make this into a 3-stop race. But what is the ace that Clemens has got up his sleeve, if any, with regards to that pit stop 11 laps in, unless he's going to have a very long second stint now in order to get himself back on a 3-stop, otherwise he is potentially at risk of moving to a 4-stop as he comes down towards the final 2 corners. Does he go straight on? No, he does not. He makes his way on through to complete another lap, and with that he will retake P2 in the LMDH class, as pit is still being serviced right now in the pit lane, and Will Clivens rolling on through as we then do look to Jake Pit there, and the car almost finished with regards to servicing, but much longer pit stop here, and perhaps Clivens has found a way to make it, so he's got a much shorter stop up front, and will then later on he'll have the longer pit stops, and that may be how they've worked it in the fact picking up that damage early on, more in the end looking for the first lap where it was possible to come in and therefore switch the strategy on around, and Clemens may have just made that work. Azz Tech Racing Black, meanwhile, have come out of the pit lane, lapped out on the leader, effectively now being lapped by NXTGEN Racing at BM, while iRace eSports 1 minute and 15 seconds behind and trying to chase after the leaders. And on that previous lap, in fact, taking 2.5 attempts out of the leaders, it does seem to ebb and flow with time here. And Clemens right now hoping he can really start to cut into that lead once the NXTGEN Racing at BM come into the pits for their first scheduled stop. In fact, we see them making their way down towards turn number 10. The Irishman here, Benjamin McCluskey, continuing to charge on and doing everything right thus far, albeit sector times this lap round starting to fall away by comparison with the iRace eSports cars sector time. So I think we could be expecting McCluskey to come into the pits within the next 3 to 4 laps, if not sooner. It might be a sign of changing times and momentum here, but given the gap and with the pit, it was a 1 minute 20 end-to-end stop, 51 seconds stationary, and as McCluskey goes on through to do another lap, it's a 25.403 for iRace eSports. For NXTGEN Racing BM, meanwhile, it's a 25.529, so another 10th gain by the challengers behind, but it's a long way to go. Indeed, that gap quite colossal at this time, and therefore I think NXTGEN Racing BM will feel as though the cards are falling in their favour. But looking from one class leader to another, here's your LMP3 class leader for CSA Endurance of Stefan Vessels, and he heads up towards turn number 3-4, and he goes into the first of the chicanes right now with a 42.5-second gap to Speed 9 Esports' Paul Williams. Vessels absolutely storming away, and the average lap comparison does seem to indicate that Vessels right now are really pushing a couple of tenths of laps as a minimum, if not more. And in fact, to give you an idea of that lap time comparison, as we do show you the lap times there in the bottom centre of your screen, over the last couple of laps, in fact there, Vessels are putting over what is in the space of what has been a 5-lap total of 8 seconds over Williams, and when the last 2 laps, 4 attempts on average there, and I think that is the natural average between Vessels and Williams right now. Stefan Vessels absolutely a force to be reckoned with here. The consistency unimaginably close, and as he heads up towards the end of this lap, well, right now the South African driver here, no sign of a pit stop coming out of the car yet, but you can imagine with the pace they're showing, they've got plenty of options with regards to strategy, and at any moment they could decide to come in. As he goes on to another lap and up towards the start finish line, we look to Paul Williams down in P2 with an advantage of what is respectively 18 seconds over Speedline Esports B. The sister car has been piloted by Mike Friedner, and Will Williams right now in a bit of a lonely place in P2. The Speedline Esports driver here, I think, feeling comfortable with how this race is going, and really the target would have been P2 based on qualifying. I think right now well on course to make that P2 a reality. As he heads up towards turns 13 and 14, when you do look at the livery of the Speed 9 eSports car, you may notice it is a callback to a very infamous Bentley livery. Indeed, Speed 9 eSports are huge fans of the Bentley Speed machines, and as he heads up towards what is another lap, to tell you a little bit more specifically about the car, which is in reference to, well, the As he heads up towards turn number 1, it is a reference to the Bentley Le Mans machine, and well, the old Le Mans machine no longer racing, but it was known as the Speed 8 car. And as he heads on around the Bentley Speed 8 being channeled on through here, a car which did race with a very potent Audi stroke Bentley 4-litre V8 twin turbo car in a mid-engine configuration, and what a car that was absolutely phenomenal for all the right reasons. And it returned to the 24 Le Mans in 2001 and did everything to the best of its ability. In terms of its results, it did in the end in the 24 Hour Le Mans take the win in class in 2001, 2002 and 2003, and in fact a 1-2 for Team Bentley in the LMDH class in 2003, and definitely a day to prevail for Bentley Speed 8 Sports. But nowadays, being channeled through Speed 9 eSports here, and we'll Paul Williams leading the way for the team currently as he makes his way on through what is turn number 10. Indeed, keep your eyes on the Speed 9 eSports team wherever you see them. They'll normally be running a Bentley livery, and it will normally be a tribute to a special event or a special achievement by Bentley. And indeed, some of you may right now remember back to the special livery that was run by them in the GT3 League hosted by NXTGEN, albeit a couple of seasons ago, where when we went to Bathurst, they were running a livery in honour of Bentley's achievements at the 12 Hours Bathurst. But meanwhile, as Williams makes his way on down towards the next lap, and charging onwards he goes, going on to what for him is lap number 25. Meanwhile, Mike Reedner a bit further behind here and heading in towards what will be lap number 25 himself. And the lap times by comparison, well, right now for Mike Reedner, not quite in the same ballpark as Williams. The relative lap time as he comes to the line here, somewhere in the region of at least 2 seconds off is where to understand it, but still. As he crosses the timeline, that time around, the lap is a 35.040, so that time only 1.2 seconds the delta. So Reedner here starting to find a little bit more speed as he makes his way on around. But meanwhile, in the Facebook chat there, we have had a message from John Meredith to say that he thinks that Alex left the start line with the wrong setup, hence the early pit. So that does confirm our suspicions that there may not have been as much fuel in the car. There may have been a qualifying setup on the Chemical E Motorsport UK car in terms of the amount of fuel put in. And this may be a car that's a lot less stable, particularly when it's got less fuel in the car, given the fact to have all the rotation in the world to try and give it the best possible single lap speed. But that could also mean this is a car that right now is very fragile to aspects such as its tyres, whereby it's been made to get the most out of the tyres over a single lap compared to what would be over an extended stint, which is where a race setup generally differs. But to take you through that in more detail and explain it all, what's the difference between race and qualifying setups then? Well, apart from the obvious, which is in qualifying, you want minimal fuel in the car to give yourself the least amount of weight to carry from corner to corner and to the very end of the lap. And that enables you to gain more time down the straight. It also means you normally get back on the throttle sooner on corner exit, given the fact there's less fuel sloshing around in the car, particularly if the fuel tank is in the back, albeit unfortunately the fuel tank being in the front. Very different in the GT3 class compared to most of its peers, which have the fuel tank behind the driver. The Porsche has it in at the very nose. But the point being that as well as the fuel difference, you also change things on the car, such as, for example, the anti-roll bars, and also the amount of what is camber that's been applied to the tyres. The anti-roll bars naturally stiffening the car up in terms of the front and the rear, but there being a front roll bar and a rear roll bar. And the idea being that you want a car that really does want to rotate on corner entry, but also is quite susceptible to rotation mid-apex, so that way you can get the best possible line out of the corner. But when you do open up those roll bars or stiffen them as needed, it can also lead to the car being very sensitive to steering inputs on corner entry and also on corner exit, and in turn it does mean that after multiple successive laps you can be driving a car that does feel very sensitive to the touch. Meanwhile, in regards to the camber on the tyres, that's the angle the tyres make with the road, and you normally see race cars do have their tyres. If you stood behind a race car looking forward, you'll see the tyres tilted in at the top in towards where's the car, and at the bottom out towards the tarmac. The idea being the tyre patch, when it goes through rotation for a corner, as you can see there for Alex Meredith from the Chemical E Motorsport UK car, as he goes through a corner, the tyres on the outside will be lent on, and as they are lent on, the camber of the tyre, or the angle of the tyre, means that in fact more of the tyre makes contact with the road surface and therefore provides greater grip. Now, the more camber you run on a tyre, the what this does essentially is it starts to spread the tyre temperature a little bit less unevenly across the tyre. In the fact, when you're going down the straight, like what is Meredith's car right now, you'll be seeing that the outside edge of the tyre, particularly if it's a heavy camber tyre, will get quite hot, whereas the inside edge by comparison will start to cool down as it's making less contact. But in the corners, that's where it builds up heat once again. So therefore you'll have a little bit less camber on the tyre when you go into the race, and it spreads the heat across the tyre, and therefore it reduces the wear rate across the tyre as well. It makes it a much more gradual wear rate rather than the edge of the tyre becoming very heavily worn. And what if you have an uneven tyre wear, that can make a car very unstable towards the end of the stint, and well, nobody will want a car that's all over the shop when it comes to cornering. And indeed, as Meredith makes his way out of turn at number 7, they're very close to the exit wall, but delivering the run on out. And well, now with a car there that definitely has the fuel put in the car and pushing on, trying to close down at Sergio Vieira, but the BMW M4 from SR Technic Endurance doing a stellar job right now as it goes on to what for it is lap number 27. As he makes his way up through turn at number 2. Meanwhile, we do look to what is our growing charge of some of our other drivers here, including Azz Tech in the LMP3 category. He does have a 3-second gap to Joe Pinder in front, and Pinder on that last lap will trying to chase down Pinder as much as he possibly can. And well, at this time, in terms of relative lap times between the two, it's been very interesting to see Meacham and Pinder in the fact they both had to take an early pit stop for their own respective instance. And in terms of that time delta between the two, as we do take a look at it here on the bottom right corner of your screen, you can see since lap number 22, when the gap did open up to what was just shy of about 4.7 seconds, the gap has gradually wound down, and it's now down to 3.2 seconds as the end of the last lap. And Meacham is the faster on average in terms of lap time, and to show you that in terms of lap times, we see at the bottom of your screen there, well, as they make the way on through, that's Meacham versus Baker, but why Mark Baker has taken him over from Mike Reedner, it should be said. We had a pit stop from Mike Reedner, but as we then do look to what is here, the lap time comparison from Meacham to Pinder, you can see apart from on lap 22 where Pinder was the faster by 3/10, over the subsequent lap, it's now swung back to about 2/10 on average, although I think lap 26 being a bit of an outlier there, and perhaps a bit of traffic being the difference between the two of them. That battle may be coming to our screen very gradually indeed, as we see Pinder making his way on past our static camera, and then Meacham. And Meacham will have the bit between his teeth here, as you can see his rival just up the road, and they are effectively fighting, as we understand it, for P4 in the LMP3 class. Again, we'll have to wait and see how Speed9 eSports work this out, as they have had their pit stop, and in fact Speed9 eSports B's car, number 77, now being piloted by Mark Baker, and they've come out in P5, so they are battling now effectively for P3, not guaranteed to be P3 given the relative strategies. So therefore Baker's got to do it the hard way now and make up some time as they make their way in towards turns 3 and 4. As he comes on through here in a car that's now got a whole new set of tyres on it most likely, and on top of that some fuel put into the car. In fact, I do believe they may have only changed a couple of tyres, given they only spent 35.75 seconds stationary in the pit lane. That would be time for fuel to go in, plus 2 tyres changed at a minimum. Well, you would imagine that as Baker makes his way up towards what is turns 8 and 9, he'll be having to replace those left side tyres. With this circuit being a clockwise circuit, the left side tyres do see notably more wear compared to the right side tyres. And oddly enough, this is also a circuit that sees incredibly high brake usage in fast class machines such as prototypes, as we do see Baker making his way into turn at number 10, as we do have a multitude of heavy braking zones around here. And it's one of those circuits where definitely if the brakes are not up to scratch, it's very quickly exposed. And Baker heads on down towards turns 13 and 14. 5.5 seconds is the gap to Meacham, but he is closing it gradually, as meanwhile Pinder makes his way on past the pit wall once again. He decides not to come on in, and meanwhile into the pits from the lead of the GT3 class comes SR Technic Endurance as they make the way on down. Well, I wouldn't be surprised here if Sergio Vieira may be getting out the car and swapping with his teammate, who will see it in due course. But either way, Vieira delivering a very good opening stint for SR Technic Endurance, and will Alex Meredith now, with that early pit stop, will try to respond and we are seeing Meredith making his way on down the back straight at the moment, with Craig Tiddleston just a bit further up the road, on course to potentially for a lap behind the top two. But as he makes his way into the braking zone here, well, SR Technic Endurance, in fact, got themselves out of the pits again already, and Sergio Vera still behind the car, a 23.72 second stop. So they've decided to go for fuel only by the looks of things here, and perhaps 1 or 2 tyres being changed, perhaps just 1 tyre if needed. But the point being, the 135 team have decided to give themselves safety and stay ahead of Kenny Talk Motorsport UK, and well, the gap now standing at what is 8.5 seconds, down to 7.5 seconds in fact, so our times are adjusted. But Sergio Vera and SR Technic Endurance lead the way in class as they make their way into stint number 2. And meanwhile, more pit stops abound here, as into the pits from the overall and the LMDH race lead is NXTGEN Racing at BM as he makes his way on down the pit lane. Well, it's been a lonely opening stint after a good race start that's just seen him break away from the field, and with Clemens taking that very early pit stop. And to put it in perspective, iRace eSports pitted after what was 11 laps. Meanwhile, McCluskey and NXTGEN Racing BM are pitting after what is 33 laps. So therefore, they have gone triple the distance, and with that, well, the pit stop from Clemens and the team, we're not quite sure what exactly the pit stop was for, apart from potential repair work to the car and potentially trying to modify that into what is a reversed strategy, where they might have been going for a shorter stint at the end of the race. Now they've had their shorter stint at the start of the race. But the item of question here is, what can Clemens do in order to offset what seems to be a dominant Cadillac that's leading the way by 1 minute and 20 seconds, albeit as the iRace eSports car makes its way into the turn 10 hairpin. They'll be feeling as though they can potentially now make up some ground as they head on down the back straight. We're charging up to speed here, and we'll work still going on the pit lane on the NXTGEN Racing BM Cadillac. As I look out my commentary booth window, they are continuing to do the work right now. In fact, they finished the work, cars off the jacks and making its way on out. You'll see Clemens briefly in the very rear of the pitch. He'll be a speck in the camera, and that's exactly how McCluskey will want it as he comes out into a bit of traffic. That's the second place LMP2 of Azz Tech Racing White that re-emerges, but McCluskey and NXTGEN Racing BM re-emerge your race leaders with what is a 13.1 second gap to Clemens in P2 as he makes his way on through turn number 2. As he comes on through the first chicane here, well, iRace eSports now will need to try and pounce sooner rather than later, in the fact that that early pit stop, it has cost them very dear and deep. And remembering the spin earlier as well with the NXTGEN Racing Pinky JD car, which did cost them the best part of what was approximately about 15 to 20 seconds on race time. So Clemens right now having to make up will be 20 seconds to the minimum, and then also inverted strategy as he goes along. Well, he is going to have an opportunity to bring that gap down as NXTGEN Racing BM will need to get their tyres back up to temperature. With a 50.8 second stop, it would be surprised if the BM team have decided to go for a full set of tyres on the car and also a full tank of fuel. But meanwhile, in a dramatic turn of events, we've got a car that's spun at turn number 1, and we've had to turn number 2, and that's Mark Baker for Speed 9 Esports B, who's got it very wrong. As meanwhile, Paul Williams comes through in the leading Speed 9 Esports car in P2, and what exactly happened to our LMP3 P5 driver. As Baker made his way down towards turn number 1. Bring the car to the right and onto the brakes here, all the way down the gearbox, hits the curb, car drops off the curb, and you can see that the suspension rebounding, and it just unsettled the rear of the car and sends it on around. But Baker doing very well to turn the car around rapidly and then get back up to speed. They're losing about 6 to 7 seconds on race time, but still he'll be in the hunt to try and chase down Baz Meacham and Joe Pinder, albeit talking about the pair of Pinder and Meacham. The gap between them right now down to 1.6 seconds, albeit it is a little bit of a tug of war here with regards to the lap time. Last lap it was a 10th gained by Meacham and Pinder. The lap before that it was the 10th made up by Pinder versus Meacham. So therefore you can imagine that these two right now, neither one wanting to give in, and indeed both having made one pit stop early on already. So we are waiting for them to take their second stop, which will be, we suspect, with Vessels and Williams still going out there. And normally the LMP3s are able to pit on the hour or thereabouts. With Pinder and Meacham, we'd expect them to make what would be their second stops of the day, and effectively their final stops of the day are around the 1 hour 10 minute mark to the 1 hour 20 minute mark, albeit those tyres will definitely see some quite sizable wear to them, and therefore it could make those final few laps very interesting in terms of how the car feels. We'll see Pinder there absolutely nailing turns 3 and 4, running the car smartly between the apexes. As he comes down onto the brakes here for turn number 6 and 7. Left into right he goes, and everything right now looking to be going nicely for the Briton, but he's got to keep nailing these corners lap after lap because the Crystal Motorsport car piloted by Azz is not too far away, and he would love an opportunity to go hunting for another place. But as he makes his way on through in turns 8 and 9, there you see him been down a poor run out to the next chicane by comparison, and the rear of the car sliding around slightly as a result. That Meacham will close up on that. In fact, he's gained half a second with the error from Pinder, so this gap is continuing to wind down, and a lock up there for Meacham as he comes on through into turn at number 10. It doesn't cost him too much, it costs him a 10th in the end on average, but there I think with the lock up, really just having to let off the brakes and let the car run deep, you'll gain a bit more straight line speed as a run down the back straight here, so it will work out favourably in the end. Won't want to keep making those lockups because understandably he'll take life out of the brakes and also the tyre which the lockup is associated with, and create a flat spot on the tyre, and that will make it a very bumpy tyre as time goes on. But as they head up towards turn number 1, this time round, a gap now down to, what is there, 1.35 seconds, and well, with that, the lap time there, a personal best for Azz Meacham, a 33.987. Meanwhile, for Indian Motorsport Spark in the former Pinder, it was a 34.082, so therefore a 10th between them. That gap continuing to wind its way up and down, and well, these two in a dead heat right now as they make their way in towards turns 6 and 7 once again. As they come through the left into right. Meanwhile, we do look from them to what is a bit further up the road in the form of your LMP2 leader, James Gilles, the Azz Tech Racing driver here, as he is on to what is lap number 35. And interesting in the way, in the fact that Gilles right now not really breaking away too much in the LMP3 behind of CSA Endurance. The gap between them standing at what is, I do believe, about 22 seconds. But the point being here, with that 3-second a lap difference between the LMP2s and LMP3s, it's actually quite close between the classes here. And that can lead to a little bit of a situation whereby if you do end up coming up behind one of the slower classes, or particularly LMP2 versus LMP3, you don't really have many places to make the move. It's more on the straights, which is where you'll gain at the overspeed. So it definitely makes traffic a little bit more dangerous here in terms of compromising your race time. But meanwhile, speaking of trying to be the danger man, as we look here to your race leader in the GT3 class, of Circuit Gilles Villeneuve for SR Technic Endurance. You won't quite see him at the moment, but you can hear the faint sound in the background of what is Alex Meredith coming on through into turns 8 and 9 as he weaves his way, and that gap now down to 7 seconds. The coming to eMotorsport UK driver, albeit Meredith, remember, pitted on lap number 2, and as a result, now trying to have to go hunting once again here. And well, has he got to do an extra pit stop on top of his strategy? That'll be the thing he's hoping he doesn't have to do. Well, with the fact that Vieira making the first pit stop 28 laps in, and that was a pit stop around the region of what was the 48-minute mark, it is going to be tenuous here. I think we may see coming to eMotorsport UK, if they are going to get their driver to the end of this race on what is a 2-stop strategy, it's going to require a lot of fuel saving at some point. Alternatively, they are going to have to go for broke and perhaps invest in an extra pit stop. But either way, it may just relegate them to what is a P2 here in the GT3 class, and it will mean they're not able to wrap up the championship with a round to spare, but instead it will go to the season finale, and it will be the Circuit of the Americas 2 weeks' time. But again, I'm reading a bit too much into this at the moment. We still have plenty of time to go here in Canada, and anything can happen before it's all said and done. Since our first 2 retirees in the LMDH class of NXTGEN Racing at Pinky JD, and in the LMP3 class of NXTGEN Darkside Racing, we've not seen any other retirements thus far, and touch wood, we hope it stays that way, because at the end of the day we don't want to see retirements where possible. It's unfortunate when it does happen, and it is a part of motorsport, whether it be in the real world or simulated. But for our drivers here today, we want to see them all get to the end, and that's what it's all about. But as we do look from the GT3s back to the LMP3s, here is your class leader, Stefan Vessels of CSA Endurance, and he makes his way up towards what is turns 13 and 14. In the charge he goes here, on down the back straight, and we'll in fact just listening on. As we take a brief moment to listen to the wonderful reverberations of that V8 engine, with Vessels in to the pit lane here, and dead on time, 56 minutes into this race, he decides to come in for that first pit stop. which we expected around the 1 hour mark, so we're pretty much bang on there as he now makes his way on down the pit lane. But meanwhile, close battle here between Azz Tech and Joe Pinder for P3 in the LMP3 cars, and the England Motorsport Spark Drive now under pressure from 4 attempts back by the Crystal Sport LMP3 that does have the iRace eSports LMDH car close behind, albeit they'll go for the run out of the corner with the LMDH having the greater straight line speed. The combination of its V8 engine plus also its hybrid battery, you'll see it just charges from the right of your picture, and including going around the outside of the England Motorsport Spark, and I think their meter just backing off slightly in order to respect the traffic coming up behind as they make their way in to the chicane. On to the brakes they go, right into left here, weaving the way on through. We'll need a driver there wanting to take the apex curves and understanding those curves where they are significantly raised will upset the suspension and they'll cause it to travel quite aggressively. But meanwhile, CS Endurance leaving the pit lane now, and as they do, they'll come out behind this battle, but they will have a lap over this battle to their advantage. The Speed9 eSports now making their way into the pit lane as we in fact look to the exterior cameras here, and they make their way on down, and will pull Williams pulling off an absolutely brilliant first stint with an advantage of what is 2.5 minutes practically over the battle for P3. And I think right now he'll be feeling as though everything is proceeding as planned for P2 here today. But meanwhile, taking over the CS8 endurance car is none other than Matt Shorter. He's taken over from Stefan Vessels, and I think Vessels will be very grateful to take a breather from being behind the car as Shorter now. It's not his birthday this week, it was last week, and therefore the number 27 car being piloted by the ever-capable driver as he makes his way on to his first stint here today. Coming on through and on towards turn number 10. We then look back to that battle for P3 in the LMP3 class, as we see here Pinder versus Meacham, and they do have Matt Shorter closing up, and Shorter gets ever closer to it, and I think he'll want to try and come on through, but at the same time I think both drivers here in the form of Pinder and also Meacham will not want to be interrupted, although I think Pinder would be grateful if Shorter would interrupt the battle and then not get too close to him and cost Meacham some time. Particularly the pit stops looming about 15 to 20 minutes from now, but the tide seems to be turning against Pinder as he makes his way in to the World Champion chicane. Come from right into left as new fastest lap in the overall portion of this race, and also in the LMDH class of iRace eSports, a 24.016, and well, that was a whole 1.1 seconds faster than it was at NXTGEN Racing BM on that previous lap. So iRace eSports trying to bring themselves back into this race, but again, we're not quite sure what the strategy is looking like for iRace eSports at the moment. And it may be more just to snatch those bonus points for that fastest lap in terms of just coming on back late in the day. But meanwhile, as Pinder here continues to open that gap up versus the Crystal Sport car behind, now back up to 8 tenths. Through the left into right they go here in turns 6 and 7. Well, nothing between them. And here's the interesting thing with regards to this battle, with the fact both of these teams pitting in what was the opening 15 minutes, well, in fact opening 15 minutes, let's do a bit of mathematics in our head, in what would have been around the opening 20 minutes of the race, around the 15 to 17 minute mark. But the point here being, with the fact they're going very long, and it looks like they didn't really change tyres in the pit lane, and therefore are carrying on the tyres they started with. The tyres of these cars right now are definitely going to be feeling pain as we say that, and Pinder into the wall with the car locking up into the outside barrier at the turn 10 hairpin. And well, literally as we're just talking about the fact those tyres must be feeling quite sensitive, and the brakes as well. Pinder showing us exactly that as it's all gone wrong in a short space of time, and now Crystal Sport LMP3 move up into third place in the class. But as we now see Pinder making his way up towards what will be the final two corners, I suspect there may be a pit stop in order for the number 26 driver. Indeed, he makes his way on in. It's a damaged car, and it's the best thing to get it repaired. And we take a look back at the incident. As he made his way down under braking here, bring the car over to the left-hand side. Let's just listen. And on the brakes there, the rear of the car just let him go as he came down the gearbox. And what a surprise, he would have thought there would have been some grip available to the car, but for Pinder the grip just was not there, and perhaps in the end just pushed it a bit too hard, and for the 26 driver, that was the end of the stint. But as the car's now being repaired, meanwhile into the pits for his second pit stop for today, when he's left the pits we should say, following his second pit stop of the day, it is Alex Meredith in the GT3 class who sees that gap behind Sergio Vera for SR Technic Endurance go from what was 7 seconds all the way back up to a whole minute. And well, Meredith now will be hoping he could get this car to the very end of the race, albeit I think that is going to be a big push to get some fuel saving is going to be needed. We do know the GT3 fuel tank can go somewhere, depending on the circuit, in the region of 50 to 57 minutes, and with a grand total of 59.5 minutes for this stint for Meredith, plus the final lap as well. So you can imagine that could be up to a maximum, arguably, of another 1.5 minutes. Well, right now, Meredith definitely trying to see if he can just gradually eke out this final stint of the race, or whether he will have to make a quick splash and dash, and will the time that will be lost in the pits will be absolutely horrible if so, and it will be a heartbreak for the number 96. But as he makes his way through turn at number 10, we say hello in the Facebook chat there to Matt Emmons, who says LMP3, it looks like it might be a good battle for the podium, and indeed, Matt, albeit that podium brought to an abrupt halt with a mistake from Joe Pinder, but we'll have to wait and see whether he can get himself back into the fight with that pit stop, and indeed as well have to see if there's any further instance for other drivers in the LMP3 class. It's not over yet by any means, and also we do have what is the growing potential battle for what we second place, it would seem, between Speed9 eSports and Crest Autosport LMP3, albeit we do need to point out that Speed9 eSports have only recently pitted, only 3 laps ago, whereas Baz Beecham for Crest Autosport LMP3 pitted all the way back on lap number 9, and therefore it could be the top 2 are already settled based on strategy and pace, and in the battle for P3 is what will wind on through it to the very end. But as they make their way on around here, Williams right now taking a bit of a tight line on the exit there of the hairpin. I think just settling the car back or down, really just gradually bringing it up to speed. And as he does so, it gives us plenty of an opportunity, as we have just passed the 1 hour mark, to take you through the field as it currently stands and what we can still expect. So we take you to the leader overall in the LMDH class. This is Benjamin McCluskey piloting the NXTGEN Racing BM28 Cadillac, and well, his story, pole position by a considerable margin early on in qualifying, and then taking his foot off the gas and now pushing on as he makes his way on around here with an advantage of what is 8.3 seconds over second place team iRace eSports. The conundrum here is can iRace eSports find a way to get themselves on an offset strategy into this battle with NXTGEN Racing BM? The Cadillac does have the faster pace around here from what we've seen, particularly with its straight line speed advantage, but still iRace eSports trying to keep them honest, and here is the aforementioned P2 car. Nick Clemens behind the wheel, had to take a pit stop early on, 11 laps in due to damage picked up in a confrontation with Jamie Dory, so we should really say with the NXTGEN Racing Pinky JD car being piloted by Jamie Dory through turns at 1 and 2, albeit it was just bad place at the wrong time for what was Clemens, and in the end all went very wrong. And with it for the Briton now as he makes his way into the pit lane, where it does answer our question. He can't go much longer, comes on in there, just about hits the pit limiter line as he makes his way on down. Well, there will be one more short stop, we reckon, for NXTGEN Racing at BM, but meanwhile for iRace eSports this will likely be, or will it be their final pit stop? In fact, we're just trying to evaluate that, given the fact that NXTGEN Racing BM made their pit stop on lap 33, they're on lap 45 right now. And in fact, iRace eSports here may have to do one extra stop on top, so unless they can make that fuel tank go very long, this could be a foregone conclusion on strategy. But meanwhile, what's not a foregone conclusion here is Jake Pitt carrying on in P3 as the Azz Tech Racing Black driver pushes on here in the 660 machine, and will currently chasing after a potential P2 versus iRace eSports, and will have taken his first pit stop 22 laps into this race on a similar strategy to iRace eSports, albeit the separation of being a grand total what is 10 laps between them, and Pitt into the pit lane here. And I think this might be a scheduled stop to get them to the end of the race in the Cadillac, or very close to the end of the race. But interesting to see Clemens and Pitt both coming in, and well, now Clemens will be very shortly leaving the pit lane to push on, whereas Pitt just getting ready to come to a standstill. But that's your LMDH class, and our sole retiree of Jamie Dory for NXTGEN Racing Piggy JD after the damage picked up on lap number 1 at turn at number 1 unrepairable. And then we come on to the LMP2 class. And here we can see it's James Smagscale behind the wheel of the leading LMP2, Azz Tech Racing having secured the championship last time out at what was the Jerez circuit in Spain. Right now just carrying on from where they've left off, really looking to make it wins in every race this season as the number 9 driver comes down towards the turn 10 hairpin. Onto the brakes he goes, and well, as he does so, the ATR car looking strong as it heads up towards the end of this lap. But right now leading by the best part of 7 laps over their rivals, and that is the sister team of Azz Tech Racing White, has been piloted by Dylan Mystery. Car up on the jacks right now being serviced, in the 390 driver here coming down and getting ready to go on to another stint as they get set and ready to go, and we suspect there will be at least one more pit stop for them, and the same for Azz Gal at the front, with the first pit stop, strategic pit stop, coming on lap number 25, and they are now onto lap number 44. But meanwhile, in the LMP3 class, we then have Matt Shorter and CSA Endurance, current race leaders by the best part of almost an entire lap at this point, and just carrying on to run away with this. And Stefan Vessels was in the car in the opening stint and for qualifying, putting the car on pole in the end by the best part of 1.5 seconds. And right now Matt Shorter looking to carry on from where his teammate left off, and the South African team absolutely dominant in their display here today. And well, as we see Shorter winding his way through turns at 3 and 4, getting as close as he dare to the outside wall there. Right now they've got nothing to prove, but they'll be going for the fastest lap and looking to try and set even fast laps here. And I think Shorter and Vessels may have a little bit of a rivalry on to who can set the fastest lap in the car over the course of the day. But well on course here for the victory, presuming all goes a-OK. And with their first pit stop being on lap number 36, which was approximately 10 minutes ago, it does mean they will have one more quick pit stop at the end, unless they can do some fuel saving, and we'll have to wait and see. But it's looking as though strategy-wise it's in the bag. Meanwhile, coming on to P2, it's Paul Williams here behind the wheel of the Speed9 eSports car, the number 7, as we do see it making its way up towards the final couple of corners. And as he charges his way on down the back straight, really has been the best of the rest. A bit of a lonely P2 that hasn't really seen too much company over the recent laps. And we're having pitted on at lap number 36 as well, taking the fuel tank in the car as long as it could for the first stint. Williams now onto his second stint, and again we suspect there will be a quick smash and dash pit stop before this is all said and done. As he heads his way now to lap number 43, and he does have the class leaders coming up gradually behind. We then look to Mark Baker, the other Speed9 eSports car, the B car, which has been shared by Mike Reedner and Mark Baker. After there was the expectation we would see 3 Speed9 eSports cars on the grid today, in tribute to Speed 8 eSports, the Bentley team, and the car that raced in the 24 Hour of Le Mans, and as we mentioned earlier, making it a 1-2 in 2003, but picking up the wins in class in 2001 through to 2003 over the 3-year program. More as Baker makes his way on around here and taking over the car from Mike Reedner and holding on to P3 currently. In a bit of an interesting battle with what is Joe Pinder and Baz Meacham for the final spot on the LMP3 podium. We're waiting to see who will take that, given the fact that all 3 teams are on very different strategies, albeit Baker and Pinder, in fact what we should say is Speed9 eSports B and England Motorsport Spark, both in races that have had a significant instant thus far, and therefore they are out of sync in terms of strategy, whereas Crest Motorsport LMP3 have yet to have a major instant and therefore are on a more standard strategy. But speaking of England Motorsport Spark, here is Joe Pinder, the Briton in the number 26. Enjoying one of his most successful races thus far in his career in the Proto GT3 Championship, particularly for this season, as he winds his way through. Unfortunately, we haven't got Michael Paul, the other England Motorsport Spark, the other England Motorsport car here today. We've only got the Spark car of Pinder, but still Pinder definitely making up for the absence of Paul as he heads on through at turns 67 there, and right now trying to chase down a minimum of a P4, but looking for that P3 as well as he heads up towards turns 8 to 9. And by a major incident we saw only a couple of laps ago, going into what was the turn 10 hairpin, where the car completely seized up under braking and went into the outside wall. Very smooth race, and was doing well to hold off the charge of Crest Motorsport LMP3. Speaking of him, here is Baz Meacham. He's come out of the pit lane after his first, in fact his second pit stop of the day, and running there in P5 currently. In fact, they were involved in a bit of a bump and scrape earlier on in the race. So in fact, all 3 of these teams in the battle for P3 have had moments that they won't want to have had happen today, and therefore are out to sync with regards to their relative strategies, or the standard strategy, if you will, for the Crest Autosport LMP3 driver. Right now 20 seconds behind Pinder, and looking to try and close up in that battle for 4th and potentially 3rd place on the podium. We have had one retirement in the LMP3 class, and that was in the form of the NXTGEN Dark Side Racing team, who picked up unrepairable suspension damage to the car going through turn number 1 on what was lap number 14. But as we do look then to lastly our GT3 class, here is your GT3 class leader of Sergio Vieira, the SR Technic Endurance driver, making his way up towards the final 2 corners here to complete another lap. And as he winds his way on through and down towards turns 1 and 2, with now for the 135 driver here to carry on that momentum. And with a 1 minute advantage over Chemical eMotorsport UK. They've only made one pit stop so far, and that was on schedule. Indeed, no unexpected pit stops for the team as they make the way on around here. It definitely looks as though things are going their way to really level the playing field going into the season finale in 2 weeks' time at the Circuit of the Americas. And then a further minute back, we do have Chemical eMotorsport UK, piloted by Alex Meredith, and with a story of their race, an early pit stop on lap number 2 due to the fact they didn't have the fuel in the car. They had the wrong setup on the car. They still had the qualifying setup, and therefore the wrong fuel was on the grid. Well, right now, as he makes his way on around, trying to get back into the fight for what is the win, albeit a strategy, well, in fact, a pit stop down, and therefore down the strategy, and they're trying to make this final stint last all the way to the end, given the fact they pitted around the 1 hour mark, and well, they've got a very long way to go if they're going to make this happen. I suspect some fuel saving will be in order, and they will lose natural race time versus SR Technic Endurance, and it may be a bridge too far to gap. They're coming on to the final driver out there in the GT3 class, and overall in terms of position, it is their FR20 Sim Racing years Craig Tillotson, the number 34 car here in the Ferrari 488 Evo. Well, right now carrying on after an early incident which saw their race upset to a degree and has dropped them a lap down compared to the rest of the GT3 class, but still 2 pit stops in and carrying on here and looking to fight on for the final podium spot of the GT3 class. That's an update on your field, ladies and gentlemen. 15 starters, 13 still racing, and still we do have the best part of that 48 minutes plus the final lap of racing action as Tillotson there almost getting it wrong. Coming out of the turn 3-4 chicane, the rear of the car just sliding slightly on pound. You've got to be so careful around here. It's so easy to make a mistake in Montreal, but as he comes on through turns 6 and 7. Another moment there, the car really letting go. Well, Craig Tillotson definitely not comfortable in this car right now, having only recently pitted, in fact, only 3 laps ago he came into the pits, so therefore I think just trying to get those tyres into the zone, but the car definitely not wanting to comply as he makes his way down towards turn number 10, and meanwhile, looking at an LMP2 making its way on past, we've heard there's been an incident for what is the Azz Tech Racing White LMP2, and well, for Dylan Mystery, it's all gone wrong, and we take a look as to what exactly happened. This is in the run down towards turn at number 1 for the 390 car as it made its way into the braking zone. Onto the brakes and therefore a lock up and onto the grass, contact with the barrier. Well, that was the first of a number of incidents that happened to the car over the course of what was this lap, and in fact going on to a bit later in the lap as they made the way on around. I believe this may have been, well, in fact no, we've just had a bit of an error with regards to our instant counter, and in the end the damage to the knock to the wall there has caused sufficient damage to the car to require them to be towed to the pit. They therefore will not be able to carry on and will have to take an emergency pit stop. But meanwhile, as we see Craig Tillotson making his way on around at the front of the field, we do have a change of driver in what is the 3rd place LMDH, and this is Matthew Cheverton, who has taken over the Azz Tech Racing Black Machine as he makes his way around, albeit we briefly lose him and he rematerialises from the ether, and hopefully that's not a sign of something to come here. In fact, they keep appearing and disappearing due to latency as they head up towards turns 6 and 7. And we're back up to what is it, turns 8 and 9 we should say, but as we look from one LMDH that definitely is not sure whether it wants to be here or not, to an LMDH that is here in terms of connection. The iRace eSports car of Nick Cluins right now pushing on, and well, still trying to hunt down that time to NXTGEN Racing BM, and how can they make that time up? That's the big question. Well, given the fact that over the last couple of laps the Cadillac in the form of Benjamin McCluskey has just broken away once again, and in fact it's coming up behind. The gap is only 2 seconds. I think Clemens here may have to settle for P2 and know that it is all going to go down to the wire in the season finale in a week's time, whereas it could have been potentially a done and dusted deal today, or at least very much in his capable hands. But now it will be close to that season finale, albeit with the absence of NXTGEN Racing Purple, who will lose the championship lead to iRace eSports as things finish as they currently stand. The point being that it will be what is NXTGEN Racing BM who will put themselves in the 3rd place spot and give themselves an opportunity to go on the offensive for what is the win of the championship come the season finale at the Circuit of the Americas. So therefore, there are plenty of permutations in this championship battle in the LMDH, as Clemens here coming up behind a bit of traffic in the form of the Indian Motorsport Spa LMP3. Can't really find his way around initially right now. In fact, he's boxed in there going in to the chicane, and that's just the natural way and flow of things. Well, it's been a hybrid street circuit. You definitely see that tight nature now manifesting in the fact that dealing with traffic has proven to be troublesome for Clemens on this lap, and as he heads on down towards the braking zone here for turns 8 to 9. No such issues for NXTGEN Racing BM's Benjamin McCluskey, who finds his way on through a very smooth transition as he now gets closer to the back of the iRace eSports car, and Clemens will be very eager not to let the class leader on through to essentially put a lap on him, but I think with the blue flags beckoning, it may only be time before he does have to give way. As they make their way down the back straight again, the iRace eSports BMW M8 Hybrid finding the traffic at all the wrong times, whereas the NXTGEN Racing BM, they're catching the traffic exactly the right time as they head into the chicane. The World Champion chicane beckons. In fact, Clemens is into the pit lane. He releases McCluskey to go on, and Clemens, I think, decides to take another pit stop here to give himself clear track, but also not have to worry about losing a lap to when it's NXTGEN Racing BM, and now seeing if they can get the car set up for the final stint here, albeit I think it will be more to make sure the car gets to P2 at the end of this race. I can't see them finding a way back on strategy here. I think it's going to come down to an instant for NXTGEN Racing BM, or alternatively a retirement, which will turn the tide. But as we say hello in the YouTube chat there to Stefan Vessels, who moments ago, in fact about 10 to 15 minutes ago, said good evening, and Matt is in the car now. Well, Stefan, great first stint from yourself, very consistent stint, and well, looking to see Matt taking over the car, indeed carrying on that consistency. And CSA Endurance definitely the team to beat here today, and with the results potentially on their way. What we can tell you, if we just do a little bit of quick mathematics, is that the result will show that following this round, if they finish as they currently are, it will be in the LMP3 class. CSA Endurance will take the win here in the championship, with the fact that Indian Motorsport is not in attendance today, and therefore it will be the fact they lose out some key points. CSA Endurance will be crowned champions with a round 2 spare going to the circuit of the Americas. So sure to right now, definitely trying to carry on here and make sure things finish on a high for the team. As they make their way up towards what is turns 8 to 9 there, making their way on around the Speedline eSports car, Paul Williams. They get a lap back on the second place car. And in return here now, Speedline eSports just following in the train, and indeed being wary of what is there, the P2 LMDH coming through at iRace eSports. Onto the brakes they all go, a lock up there for a car in front. I believe that may have been a lock up, in fact, for CSA Endurance, their first mistake of today. Indeed, they haven't had that many mistakes, or if they have, we haven't noticed them. And as they head on down the back stretch, charging on and down as fast as they possibly can right now. Well, with time gradually wearing out this race, our drivers right now will be changing their tact mentally, and I think thinking about now the battles that lie ahead. Speaking of those battles, with the key one that we are wondering about is the fight for P3 in the LMP3 class, as we do see here Mark Baker in the Speedline eSports B car heading on through. Keeping in mind they've only made one pit stop thus far, and it was a very early stop in comparison with their peers, but depending on where they come out after this, well, the gap to their fellow LMP3 counterparts is the best part currently of 47 seconds, and that's in the form of Joe Pinder, with Baz Meacham a further 20 seconds behind. But Baker right now delivering the laps, we suspect on low fuel in the car, but the point being maximising the condition of the car to get those laps in, and therefore give himself and the team every opportunity. We reckon the battle for P3 and the time posed by the LMP3 cars could be incredibly close before this is all said and done. And as they wind the way around, Baker right now just keeping the car calm and carrying on and heading up towards what will be there the next chicane. And right now thinking that everything could go his way, but as he rolls his way on through, it's a long time to go still. There's plenty of time still in this race, and everybody knows that a single mistake could be the difference between you picking up a great result and the race ending in taxes before it's all said and done. As Baker makes his way in to turn number 10. Meanwhile, we do look from our LMP3 driver P3 to our P5 LMP3 driver of Crystal Sport LMP3's Baz Meacham as he heads up towards turn number 1. And coming on down here, relative lap times at the moment slightly faster than Joe Pinder for Indian Motorsport Spark by an average a 10th a lap, but it's not really a big enough gain at the moment. Pinder's responding very well in this new stint of the race, and I think in fact Pinder right now could really be the favourite for his P3 in the LMP3 class, but Meacham was able to find behind and gain a couple of attempts a lap. You may be able to start to grind that gap down. Albeit there, the P2 LMDH coming up behind, but again the responsibility is on the faster car to find its way on through, and the blue flag rules working in multi-class racing, particularly in the Prototype GT3 Championship, a bit differently from the blue flag rules you would normally see in, say, at Formula 1. The idea being in Formula 1, the blue flag rules state that the car that is about to be lapped is required to step aside effectively for the faster car that's going on through, whereas here, the blue flag rules that we're implementing are much like GT class racing blue flag rules, which is there is a faster car coming up behind. Be prepared to hold your line and not make any sudden moves or react or battle with that car, but the faster car has to take the initiative in terms of making the move. So therefore, as Meacham just let on through what was the iRace eSports car and didn't really have to worry too much with the overspeed the LMDH could pick up, the point being there, Meacham is in safe hands and just has to focus on driving his race, and the fastest car coming up behind will do all the hard work for him. But speaking of hard work, James Moses-Gow making his way into the pits once again here to take what is the second pit stop for the LMP2 team of Azz Tech Racing, as they put the car back on the jacks once again. Well, right now being serviced there, and this will be the pit stop that takes them to the end of the race when all is said and done by the looks of things. But as they sit there right now and get ready to go once again, well, as they make their way on through, we do to what is here, NXTGEN Racing PM, and well, the number 28 car right now carrying on its way on through the right into left. And I can see there, Stephen Vessel saying in the YouTube chat that if CSA Endurance win today, then Mark Baker in third will still have a mathematical chance. It will go to last race. We, well, in fact, just double checking that, and in fact, you are correct there, and we do apologise for that, and the fact that Speed9 eSports and B are currently on 90 points. Yes, the championship will still carry on all the way through to the season finale, so I do apologise for that, for misleading you all, ladies and gentlemen. My mathematics not been too good this evening, it would seem, and Warren McCluskey makes his way through turn number 5 and up towards 6-7 right now. He won't be thinking about the championship permutations, albeit he'll know he'll play some good ground on the NXTGEN Purple and iRace eSports before the season finale, as he heads up towards what will be at turns number 8 and 9 right now, just doing everything right as he rolls his way on through. A lap ahead of the rest of the field as a minimum, and we'll knowing there's one more pit stop to come, but that pit stop won't be coming until probably the last 30 minutes of this race, given the relative stint times that we have seen, and therefore he's just got to nurse the car all the way up to there. But meanwhile, looking back to Joe Pinder here, running in P4 in the LMP3 class, and right now holding the 20.2 second gap to Baz Meacham behind. And in terms of relative lap times, that last lap a tenth faster. And to put it in perspective, we will show you the time, not the time delta necessarily, but the lap time history between the two drives of Pinder and Meacham over the last couple of laps. And here it is, as we can see over what is the last 5 laps. It has oscillated back and forth, albeit Meacham has been on average slightly slower, and Pinder has opened up that gap on the 5-lap average by what is approximately, if we do some quick mathematics there, around the region of 2.5 tenths a lap. So it does seem as though Pinder right now really in the zone when it comes to delivering these lap times. But as they make their way up towards turn number 13, right now Pinder will know it's not all over yet. And we can see this manifested with regards to the time delta between the two of them, in the fact that gap has gradually opened up from what was just over 18.2 seconds all the way out to 20.1 seconds as they go on to the next lap. And as they do, well, it is the response of that Meacham to try and keep that gap as honest as possible. But I suspect in reality right now, Pinder just nailing this in terms of lap after lap and not making any mistakes, and it's just buying him enough time here in order to hold on to that potential P3. But presuming, of course, the Speed9 eSports do need to pit once again. Mark Baker still out there at the moment. He pitted on lap number 25, so he has almost gone 30 laps now without the second pit stop. And to put you in the perspective, we did see our race leaders come into the pits after 36 laps. So we are expecting the LMP3 car not to be able to go more than what is 40 laps on a single stint. 36, I think, is the peg point with regards to the strategy. But point being right now, Baker will need to come in once more unless he's doing some colossal fuel saving on a very secret technique that we don't know anything about. As he makes his way in towards turn number 1. This race definitely right now coming into a zone where we'll have to wait and see where they come out. They're 50.5 seconds ahead of the Motorsport Spark team currently, so therefore we could see Baker and Pinder quite close together on circuit, with the pit stop time will be in the region. The time of the pits will be about 1 minute and 15 seconds. And that translates into time lost. It will be about a minute lost in the end. But if Baker can keep up this pace, well, he has got the pace to potentially make his way past Pinder and Beecham. It just depends on how long he has left and how many laps he can put in on that final stint to close the gap up. But I reckon it'll be somewhere in the region of about what will be 10 to 15 seconds between Baker and Pinder, and Beecham will then be coming up behind a further 10 seconds back if my maths is correct. But we'll have to wait and see whether that's what happens in practice as Baker makes his way into the final corners. He rolls away out of turn number 10, and now only 2 major corners until over before he heads on to another lap. As he skips them and comes into the pit lane, we'll stay with him on the run on down here as he gets ready to head into the brains and brings the car over to the left as per the normal race line, and then just gradually weaves there on the braking as he heads into the chicane. Well, for Mark Baker, definitely another lap to be approved here as he heads on to what for him is now lap number 55. Well, as he heads across the line, meanwhile we do look to Matt Shorter, your class leader in the LMP3 class and the CSA endurance driver, still carrying on, making his way on around here and up towards turns 6 to 7, and well, no pressure at the moment as he does have the LMDH leader coming up behind, and well, he'll just focus on holding his line as they make their way out of the corner, and then it'll be Benjamin McCluskey who looks up the inside there through the king of the straight as they head into turns 8 to 9. Charging down into the braking zone here for the right to left. 33 minutes left on the clock, and Shorter at this point will know there is going to be probably another pit stop just to be squeezed in right at the end. But still the number 27 driver here focusing on just enjoying the stint whilst he's behind the helm of the car. As meanwhile into the pit lane has come Sergio Vieira, and well, quite an extended pit stop there, 33 second stationary time. They've come in for their second stop, and I think for the GT3 leaders this will be their final stop of the day. And well, as Kemi to Motorsport make their way towards the end of the lap, they won't get visibility of what is there Sergio Vieira, but here are your second place drivers at Kemi to Motorsport UK, and as they head on through, Alex Meredith right now will know that gap has come down, but he also knows he's got another pit stop to make unless he can get the fuel to extend all the way for the best part of an hour plus the tyres. And well, I think that may be a bit too much to ask of the car and driver as he heads up towards turns 3 and 4. But definitely right now, I think Meredith feels as though here it is not going his way, and therefore just fighting for what will be that runner-up spot when all is said and done, as he rides his way on around what is their turn number 5 and up towards 6-7. But still, when there's a will, there's a way, and he'll look to try and make it happen before it's all said and done, and hopefully in his mind be able to find a way back into this battle for the win. I think now it's going to come down to Lady Luck, the racing gods if you will, to try and give him that opportunity. And well, SR Technic Endurance looking absolutely bulletproof right now in terms of their driving as they make their way on towards the end of their current lap after their pit stop. That BMW M4 is for a very strong car in the GT3 category, and around here as well a circuit quite naturally suited to the BMW M4, given the fact it is a bit of a straight line monster and also a very stable car. Well, that combination goes well when you've got multiple chicanes where stability is a must, and you've got extended straights where that top end speed will be very beneficial. Where he heads on to another lap of the Vieira right now, winding his way onto what for him is lap number 55. Carrying his way a lot across the line, and onwards he goes. And well, in the meantime, we do look to what is the LMP2 class. Here's your class leaders, James Maxwell's Gal for Azz Tech Racing. In fact, we are going to ride on board here with James Maxwell's Gal as he gets ready to take us around for a lap on the LMP2. Well, the LMP2 class, we should say, of the Montreal circuit, and we'll just go quiet as he does so and let you listen into the wonder of the V8 engine behind the Clara P271 machine. of the lap. That was the lap to the LMP2 Talara P217 by James Gilles Villeneuve Azz Tech Racing, and a wonderful machine, the LMP2 Talara, as he made his way on around there. The roar of the engine and driver and car in full harmony as he makes his way into the final half an hour of this race. And as he heads on through turns 3 and 4 right now, he does have the P2 LMDH immediately behind him in the form of what is there, Nick Clemens, and Clemens doing everything he can to try and muscle his way back into the potential opportunity of winning this race in the LMDH class. But a lap down, also a pit stop down as well. It does seem as though NXTGEN Racing BM have got this one sewn up today, albeit we've still got time to see whether the tables will turn. But well, we've got not too much time left in this race now. And speaking of NXTGEN Racing BM, they've just set a new fastest lap of the race as Clemens grazing the wall on the exit of turn number 9, and you can see the sparks there on the right hand side car just grazing against the concrete barrier, and well, getting it so close that we won't get any closer than that, otherwise it could end in tears. That shows you just how hard Clemens is working behind the wheel of the BMW V8M Hybrid as he tries to chase on here. And well, it's been a frustrating season, but with all that frustration in the end rewarding them with a win last night at Jerez. But again, today here, Clemens, I think, feeling as though it all ended on the open lap before it could even get underway in terms of his chance of the win. But still, that does happen in racing, and he will, and the team will be the leaders of the championship if the results finish as they currently stand going into the season finale. Albeit they'll need to hold off NXTGEN Racing Purple and NXTGEN Racing BM if they want to take that LMDH crown. As he makes his way on to another lap now, onto what is there for him at lap number 64. We look to your race leader, Benjamin McCluskey, as he makes his way to the end of lap number 65. Fastest lap being a 23.80 to the nearest 100. He heads into the braking zone. Will he come into the pits this time? He does indeed. He comes in on cool effectively. He was on lap number 65, so therefore very close to pitting. And well, this is going to be a much shorter pit stop by comparison, because they won't have to put as much fuel in the car to get to the very end. With the pit stops occurring typically around every what is 40 to 45 minutes for our LMDH drivers, but a very well run race so far for Benjamin McCluskey, and now not too long left here as he comes to the stop. And it'll be a simple stop for them. They'll most likely change the tyres on will be the left hand side, perhaps change the tyres all the way around, and also put a full tank of fuel in and get the battery topped up. And well, as he gets ready to go racing once again shortly. Meanwhile, indeed, for what is there, I can see some investors have mentioning in the YouTube chat about our third place LMDH car, Azz Tech Racing Black, and with regards to the fact Matthew Shepperton behind the wheel, and we unfortunately can't really show you them, ladies and gentlemen, because they have got significant connection issues and they are materialising and then disappearing back into the ether from what is corner to corner and pretty much every 100 metres down a straight. So hopefully they will be able to get that connection stabilised, as they will want to get to the end of the race and pick up some points. But we got James Gilles there missing the chicane, having to extend the chicane long. He will take a slowdown as a result of that and track limit penalty infringement as he makes his way up towards turns 3 and 4. It will be an instant point accrued, and Gilles there taking the safer route not to lock up the brakes. And well, when you do have a 13 lap advantage over the next team class, you can afford to back things off a little bit and choose when you do want to go all in at once more. But I think Gilles here trying to push for an even fast lap compared to the previous best, but making those mistakes, those are going to be costly, and he won't want to end up retiring the car. But meanwhile, speaking of costly moments here, is it going to be costly to take a pit stop as we see Mark Baker making his way out of the pit lane for his second and final stop for today? And in fact, he emerges. The Speed9 eSports B team have jumped all the way back into P3 here. Well, we got it wrong on the prediction. They are 20 seconds clear of that fourth place team, Igni Motorsport Spa, as Joe Pinder makes his way across the timeline. And well, Speed9 eSports B doing a phenomenal job to make it into P3 there, and they've done this on strategy, and Baker doing a fantastic job in picking up where Mike Reedner left off, and the two teammates there definitely making it work between them. As Baker's still behind the wheel of the car, where's the closing at 25 minutes of the race here, but the battle we potentially expected for what is P3, where it's 20-second gaps from P3 to P4 and P4 to P5 in the LMP3 class, but it's definitely not what we expected. We thought it was going to be a bit closer than this, and indeed now I think all three teams here will just be willing their drivers on to the very end and not to make any mistakes. As we do see Meacham winding his way on through at the chicane there through the turn 3-4 chicane, and onwards he goes. Speedy can now in towards the next braking zone, and Meacham will be going all in here to try and close down Pinder, but Pinder has found his pace over the last few laps, albeit Meacham now starting to come back at Pinder. Very gradually lost that gain in half a second, in fact. But again, it's this back and forth between the two of them, which definitely is of interest, albeit the gap being the best part of 20 plus seconds here. Here's what denies us from seeing a potential battle for fourth place, but I can tell you right now, they are exchanging lap times as if it's on the stock market floor, and with that in mind, it does mean that at any moment, the two drivers are just looking for an edge, and any mistakes that are made from drivers could prove very costly. But as we do see it, Meacham making his way on down the back straight and up towards turns 13 and 14. He can't really think about where Pinder is on circuit at the moment. All he can think about is trying to close up, and in the time available, delivering those consistent laps, hoping that some luck falls his way. As he makes his way on through the chicane there, we can see some further information from Stefan Vessels in the YouTube chat to say that one stop just about not working. It makes sense to split the stops and carry less fuel. I think if we fuel safe from lap 1, I think one stop would have been possible. It'd be intriguing to see a one stop around here, but at the same time, in the fact, like you say, it's more sensible to split these stops and therefore carry less fuel on average in the car to have an overall faster lap-to-lap time. More smart strategic work there, and indeed, it sounds like the CSA Endurance, they've been doing all the thinking before the races, and they're experimenting with multiple strategies. Well, that's why they are leading, and here is Matt Shorter as he makes his way on through and up towards turns 8 and 9. And also, where is the fun in Coast? It says Vessels in the YouTube chat, and I would agree with you there in the fact, unless it is to pull off a surprise strategic win, well, normally we do love to see drivers giving it everything, pushing 100%. And Shorter makes his way down towards turn number 10 here. Well, right now on what is a charge for his final stint. Not long left in the race for the South African, and he heads up towards turn number 13 and 14. Still 20 minutes or so to go here, and no sign of any errors beyond one lock up at turn number 10 thus far. But as we look from him to what is your GT3 class, here is your leader Sergio Vieira for Azz Tech Endurance, and the BMW M4 driver still at 13.5 seconds clear of Alex Meredith. And over the last couple of laps, in fact, Meredith has brought that gap down quite sizably. The gap has come down to what is, well, it was from 20 seconds down to 13.5 seconds. I do wonder where Meredith here has got another pit stop to take, given the fact he took his previous stop, the second stop, around the hour mark. Normally the GT3s can't go more than about 50 to 55 minutes unless there's some sizable fuel saving. And as he heads all the way up towards turn number 1, right now Meredith doing everything right on the brakes in order to nail these corners, but I think the problem is with that one additional pit stop awaiting him, therefore it is going to be an exercise in a frustrating end today, knowing he can't take the win because the strategy is not going to let him do so. But that's what happens when you get it wrong at the start in terms of setup on the car. In the context that he did put the wrong setup on the car, didn't have enough fuel in the car going onto the grid, and by the time they noticed it, it was far too late. And that's what's led to the issue that really put them out of order versus their rivals in the battle for the GT3 win after taking what was a brilliant run into turn number 1, albeit the battle between SR Technic and the Chemical Motorsport very close, but then it does look as though Chemical Motorsport will have to settle for second here today. But into the pits comes Craig Tillotson. He makes his way on in from the final GT3 spot at the moment, P3, and the FR20 Sim Racing yellow driver now onto the jacks once again for his final pit stop. A bit of a later pit stop here to go for what is his third and final pit stop, having to take an earlier pit stop in the race due to damage picked up on the car, so therefore making one additional stop compared to the standard 2-stop strategy we expected from our GT3 drivers today. But Tillotson still will notice the relatively short stop. They'll be putting the fuel in, plus changing 1 or 2 tyres. And in fact, tyre change made, fuel's in the car, and on he goes then for his final pit stop with a stationary time at 23.02 seconds. Not too much fuel having to go in the car in the end, and that's a sign of the time winding down on the clock. As he makes his way back up to speed here, staying to the left of the pit exit line. Oh, you do pick up a noticeable penalty, and I believe it may be a drive-through on the automated iRacing shorting system. More the number 34 Ferrari carries on here as it makes its way through turns 3 and 4. As he heads on around, we then do look to Azz Tech Racing White, Dylan Mystery, the last car running out of circuit overall at the moment, and the second place LMP2 car. It is 8 laps down on the first of the GT3 catch in the form of Tillotson, and therefore right now Dylan Mystery having spent quite a sizable period of time in the pits. They have had 7 pit stops so far due to damage picked up on the car, but they're still keeping their head in it to win it. And that's what we love to see. 13 laps down on class leaders Azz Tech Racing, as piloted by James Gilles, but still Mystery just carrying on here and getting more and more time behind the wheel of the Dallara P217 LMP2 machine, and as he makes his way on down towards turn number 1, pushing as much as he dares to dream to do so here, albeit the best part of what is 5 seconds a lap off of Gilles at this current rate of knots. As he comes out of turn 2 and up towards 3. Meanwhile, we do look back to your race leader here in the form of his NXTGEN Racing BM's Benjamin McCluskey, as we see there Azz Tech Racing Black right in front of them. And well, no connection issues at the moment for Azz Tech Racing Black. They seem to have resolved their connectivity issues, with Matthew Shepperton still behind the wheel of what is there the other Cadillac, and well, as they make their way down towards turn at number 10. In an unfortunate situation here where they will need to let NXTGEN Racing BM go through, and in the end up the inside. And well, we do have essentially the 3 LMDH cars in this race all together, albeit in the wrong order, coming on past one another, but it will mean the NXTGEN Racing BM now put 2 laps over what is there Azz Tech Racing Black. Meanwhile, iRace eSports will very shortly go on to put a lap over Azz Tech Racing Black. So that's your top 3, albeit they're all nose to tail, but they're not battling, sadly. Instead, they're having to negotiate one another as they make their way on through at the final corners there. And we ride on board with Nick Clemens as he chases after the Azz Tech Racing Black car of what is Matthew Shepperton. Now, under braking here, he'll feel that dirty air, and the problem by running behind this close is the fact you lose all the front end downforce in the car. And these LMDH cars are a bit less downforce compared to their LMP2 counterparts, but at the same time they do have a lot of speed at their fingertips. What they lose in downforce, and therefore for average corner apex speed, they gain from the straight line acceleration out of the corner with their hybrid battery. But you can see here Clemens really having to wait for an opportunity, getting very close into turn 7 and 8. Briefly does lose the Azz Tech Racing Black car. Connectivity issues may be coming back for what is the number 660 as they head up towards turns 8 and 9. Clemens still just cannot find a way through it, and that Cadillac absolutely astonishing on the straights in terms of acceleration. You can see the BMW gets close initially, and then the Cadillac just starts to pull away little by little as they make their way into turn number 10. And will Clemens this time up the inside, sends it in the middle of the road, and well, gets it done there and does put a lap over the Cadillac of Azz Tech Racing Black. But they'll now try and come back, and it's a long back straight here as they power the way on down. And more Clemens right now, he's got a couple of attempts between himself and the car at Shepperton. I think Shepperton will just stick behind here. He won't look to make a move, given the fact he feels though on average he is the slower driver, and he is now effectively a lap down, so it won't be a good look if he does try to overtake on the blue flags and therefore ends up triggering an instant, and the Shoes won't be too pleased with that, and well, iRace eSports won't be too pleased with that, understandably. But in the end, Shepperton just being smart there and sitting up behind as they make the way on through. As Clemens finds his way on around there, coming through turns at 1 and 2 and up towards 3 and 4. We do have some more LMDH cars coming to the iRacing platform in a future season update. It has practically been confirmed as we understand. We've got 2 more coming, and one of them will be the Acura LMDH, and the other one will be, as we understand it, the Porsche. So therefore we will have 4 LMDHs. No update on when the Ferrari will arrive, if it is to arrive at iRacing. Of course, Ferrari taking what was the win in the 24-hour Le Mans earlier this year, and well, a phenomenal effort from Ferrari to be able to secure that result on their return to the 24-hour Le Mans. A significant hiatus returning to take the win straight away at the Centenary, so it does feel as though it's fate for an anniversary as they make their way up through turn number 10. We're on the brakes there, and Clemens will brief lock-up, will make his way past the LMP3 of the Motorsport Spark and carry on as they head on through. Meanwhile, Joe Pinder, in fact, has fallen behind Baz Major, and that was for a pit stop, we can confirm. So Pinder having to make a 3rd and final stop today. Now, will we see something of the same sort from West Crest Motorsport LMD3? The gap between the 2 teams is 28.4 seconds, and winding open slightly, but that will be because Pinder had a compromise lap there as he made his way on around. It'll be intriguing to see whether Mitchell can make the LMP3 at the last what will be the remainder of this race. They've only got another 14 minutes to go, and I say they've only got, but really what I should be saying is it's 14 minutes, and with that plenty of laps still in store. And Meacham's last pit stop was on lap number 41. He is currently on lap number 66, and here he is. Well, if he is able to get it to the end, it will be a surprise turn in the strategy, and well, it won't be a sign of what is a P3. But meanwhile, it's gone wrong for Joe Pinder. That's a car around. At turn 4, we can convert the Indian Motorsport Spark car, but what exactly happens to them as they do get the car gradually turned around? They've got plenty of time to do so. That's on the exit of turn 4, and as they get themselves back up to speed, here's the replay. Making the way into turns 3 and 4, getting the first apex hooked up, the second apex as well, and in the end a little bit of power oversteer there as they tried to get clear of the wall on the exit of turn 4, so I think they carried too much speed out the corner and then reacted to it, and we ride on board for another replay here, and this may tell the full story. And in the end, it was the rear of the car letting go. You'll notice as he turned out of turn 4, got the front of the car clear from the wall, but the rear, meanwhile, came out and hit the wall. And with that contact, that kicked the car into a slight fishtail, where the rear end started to slide about, and then Pinder having to try and put in some very quick corrective steering, and the number 26 driver in the end going on around as a result. Could have been far, far worse. It could have been a race-ending incident, or one that would have seen them towed to the pits, but wasn't to be, and they carry on. But meanwhile, speaking of carrying on, as we look to them pushing on, we look to P2 GT3 of Motorsport UK's Alex Meredith, who right now has got the gap to SR Technic Endurance down to what is 5.5 seconds, but surely the Briton has got another pit stop to go before this is all over, given the fact we've seen him make some very early pit stops. I mean, the last pit stop was on lap 36, and now on lap 66, so they're going 30 laps in, and for the GT3 class, we expect they do have a grand total of what will be in the region of at least another 8 to 9 laps. Very close, but to be fair, if Meredith can pull this off, this will be a phenomenal comeback. He's still got to close up and then look for the move, and SR Technic, with all the fuel they've got in the car, plus also they do have fresher tyres in the car, we would believe that Sergio Vieira will feel a lot more comfortable as we see him now off in the distance, and we look to Sergio Vieira now to focus our attention to show that gap to Meredith behind as they make the way on through, and well, the gap of 5 seconds, not a huge gap indeed, but it's enough to give SR Technic a bit of breathing room right now. But what is Meredith planning here? Can he pull off a potential miracle and make a 2-stop dream work here off of what was a heavily compromised starting strategy, as he goes on to now what is lap number 67 in the GT3 class, with the third place car being 2 laps down of FR20 Sim Racing Heroes Craig Tillerston. Time still of the essence here, but the Meredith time is running out, and is the petrol running out in the car as well? That's the question that'll be on his mind. As he comes out to turn number 2 and up towards turns 3 and 4, he goes on the inside there. There's the Azz Tech Racing a black car as piloted by Matthew Sheraton. It makes way through, but it's a lock up there for Sheraton, and he brings the car back on, but he does so in a very amicable manner and manages to make sure he doesn't creep across the road. Instead, it's a very gentle rejoin, and well, the number 660 driver has definitely been in the wars today with regards to connectivity issues and then mistakes under braking, but still it just hasn't been the day for the Azz Tech Racing black team, and they've still got plenty of time to go with regards to another race 2 weeks from now in order to try and hunt down what will be their first podium outside of today. In fact, we're getting themselves ahead of themselves then. In fact, they are on course for a podium if they do finish this race, because they are running P3 in the LMDH class and charging on here. They'd love to be a bit more in the thick end of the action is what we're trying to say, but today it's more about just bringing the car on home and getting at those key points on the board. His way up towards what is turns 13 and 14, with our drivers now starting to head into the very last minute stages here, and this is where all the worries now start to come with regards to the fuel tank in terms of have they got enough fuel, and on top of that, with regards to have the tyres got enough life left in them. Well, a pit stop there for Dylan Midway. No, it's not a pit stop for Dylan Midway. He just missed his braking point and then to take the escape route coming through the chicane. But meanwhile, coming up behind his Community Motorsports, Alex Meredith there, who will take a lap back off the LMP2 driver. And well, Meredith right now only 4 seconds away. And well, SR Technic Endurance just up the road, being passed by Azz Tech Racing Black. Meredith right now continuing to push on and heading in towards what is turn number 3, 4 right now from the right into left. It is going to be very marginal here for Meredith on the fuel, and I can see their vessels, the Stefan Vessels in the YouTube chat trying to do the prediction, saying it may be possible if they save fuel, it is going to be literally in the final 5 minutes, I suspect we'll see, as Meredith there, a little bit of a moment coming through turn number 6, the rear of the car just sliding loose slightly, and as he makes his way up towards turns number 8 and 9, well, Alex Meredith right now giving it everything he's got. He's not holding anything back here. I think the rear tyres on that Porsche 992 will definitely be feeling the strain just as much. Driver will be feeling the impetus to push on, and as he heads on towards turn number 10 right now with John Meredith's father in the YouTube chat there, definitely cheering on his son and hoping he can find a way to make this work. But that gap right now, it's tantalisingly close. He can see that class lead in the GT3 class just ahead of him, but has he got enough in the tank to be able to go hunting after it to the very end, or will he just fall slightly short as he makes his way on down the back straight here? Will we see a potential dive to the pits this time around, or will he carry on onto another lap? He makes his way on through, but Alex Meredith right now pushing as hard as possible, just missing the exit wall there, the world champions, carrying as much speed as possible, in fact gaining half a second there through the chicane. A ferocious lap in terms of concluding it, and as he makes his way into turns 1 and 2. Meanwhile, we do have a pit stop for Matthew Cheverton, who has come into the pits there in the second of the LMDH Cadillacs for a final pit stop for today, and they're deciding to get one more in as a safety stop here to make sure they've got the fuel to get to the end of the race unscathed. In fact, a 10.5 second stop, I think they were just slightly shy of fuel, and that's why they had to bring the car on in. But meanwhile, looking from there to the other Cadillac out circuit, well, Benjamin McCluskey here still leading for NXTGEN Racing BM with a lap over iRace eSports and Nick Clemens behind, and well, that is the way to do it. It will be Benjamin McCluskey who take the victory on the sole lead lap in the end. There'll be no other driver on that lead lap if things finish as they currently stand, as he makes his way out of turn number 14. And will now only 7.5 minutes left on the clock, and that equates to approximately what will be another 6 laps here of driving for McCluskey as he sets a personal best, and with it the fastest lap of the race, a 23.775. The lap times continue to tumble down for McCluskey, and will definitely showing his dominance here today. But meanwhile, into the pit lane is Matt Shorter for CSA Insurance. It's a final quick stop here for the team as he makes his way back and out, and it's a quick fuel stop there, splash and dash, 10.35 seconds stationary time, and Shorter just deciding to put a little bit more fuel in the car to make sure they get in. They don't have to worry about emergency fuel saving or anything of the like, and as he heads on around here, that's their second stop complete. Going into turns 3 and 4. Right now they are on course, CSA Insurance, to take the LMP3 win by at least a lap over Speed9 eSports. Speaking of whom, here is Paul Williams as he makes his way on to another lap, going on to lap number 72, whereas the LMP3 leader is on lap 73. And the Speed9 eSports driver right now very comfortable at 27-second margin over fellow team at Speed9 eSports B. I think we feel as though it's a 2-3 guaranteed for the team as they make the way towards the end of the race. We'll look to Mark Baker here as he comes out the final corners to go on to another lap. Well, the Speed9 eSports speed driver with a gap of what is 40 seconds over Baz Meach and the Crystal Motorsport LMP3 team. Nowhere near close at the moment, affecting a further lap down. So Baker definitely in control of this race for that final spot. But meanwhile, we do look back here to the battle between the GT3s, and well, Meredith has got within a second as they make the way on through. It turns 8 to 9 and down towards 10 they go. But as they charge the way on through here onto the brakes, where it does look as though it's not Technic Endurance. I'm not quite sure what's happened here, but Meredith absolutely ripping the lap time out. And in fact, Vieira, the best part of a second a lap slower over the last 2 laps. Is something going wrong for SR Technic Endurance? Have they got a problem with the car? Because we haven't seen or heard about them going off anywhere. Meanwhile, Meredith behind, getting close as they make their way into the final 2 corners. 5 minutes left on the clock. But these guys are a certain number of laps, but Meredith into the pits, and it won't last. He gets very close with 5 minutes to go. The charge comes to an end, and Meredith there getting as close as he possibly could. But the Chemical eMotorsport UK Porsche does have to face reality, which is another pit stop. And well, with that now, the number 96, well, it'll go for a quick splash and dash, but it will be too far away to go hunting after the win unless SR Technic Endurance completely have a major error. But that's why I think they may have been backing this off, because of the fact they don't have to push hard. They were counting on Chemical eMotorsport UK having one more pit stop to do today, and well, that gap now is going to open up to at least about 20 seconds, and indeed it is 21 seconds now as Meredith's made his way out of the pit lane and back up to speed. Ever so close and now it's all going to come down to these last couple laps, and drivers trying to push for the fastest lap to get the fastest lap points. Speaking of which, in the LMDH class, a new fastest lap of the race, a 23.77 from what is Nick Clibbins there, a 7.75 versus McCluskey 7.8, and right now the iRace eSports driver here saying, well, if I can't win the race today, I'll definitely show you I had the pace to win it, as the BMW M V8 hybrid driver absolutely pushing on here, and as he makes his way up towards turns 8 and 9, definitely been an exercise in frustration for the number 8 driver. You can understand why, given the fact if things have been different on that opening lap, and he had been in the contact with Jamie Dury, the NXTGEN Racing Pinky JD car, which unfortunately retired as a result of that contact, then could we have seen Clemens versus McCluskey go the full distance? Well, we've been denied that, but what we instead will be getting from today is a run into a season finale at the Circuit of the Americas, which will see iRace eSports lead in the championship, where NXTGEN Racing Purple and NXTGEN Racing BM both having an opportunity to try and take the crown away from Clemens before all is said and done. As I head in towards turns 13 and 14 here, we can find a little bit of traffic and a bit of a short order of traffic as they make the way out to the World Champion chicane, and on to another lap he goes. But meanwhile, McCluskey here now onto lap number 82, and well, the time right now, there's time for 3 more laps as we're to understand it, so we will be seeing a grand total as he's on lap number 82. We'll see 84 laps turned here at the Montreal Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, the checker flag. With most of the battles, in fact all the battles have now subsided on circuit, ladies and gentlemen. We are just waiting to see whether there's any mistakes for anyone, any last-ditch moments which could potentially upset the race before it's all said and done. And once Alex Meredith makes his way there through at turns 6 and 7 and onwards towards turns 8 and 9. More right now, the number 96 driver here, I think, trying to go for the fastest lap, making sure he gets that accolade before it's all said and done. In fact, he still holds the fastest lap at the moment of 35.09. Very close to the lap we saw for pole position in the GT3 qualifying period, but now I think Meredith trying to go for a 34 if he can, and well, if he could get a 34 on the fourth lap, would be a phenomenal lap, and in fact he wouldn't put him too far off the average pace in terms of best laps from our LMP3 drivers. As he makes his way out to turn number 10 with the LMP3s averaging in the 33. So that goes to show you again, the LMP3s and GT3s are very close. The GT3s having a slight straight line speed advantage, but the LMP3s have got the downforce in order to make up and make a little bit more in with the corners. And as you can see, Meredith making his way onto what will be most likely his penultimate lap here today, with 1.5 minutes still to go. Again, close to that wall, and McCluskey responding with a new fast lap, a 23.653. The Cadillac for NXTGEN Racing BM shooting one back after what was a fastest lap for iRace eSports in the GT3 class. Kevin Tweed Motorsport UK's Alex Meredith, a 34.635. Absolutely storming on is Meredith in the GT3 class and doing everything to try and find that ultimate lap time. Indeed, he does find a 34 in the end, so well done to him. But right now, everyone pushing for those fastest lap bonus points, and indeed, it's the only points you can grab at this point beyond your track position. And everyone cognizant now that really the clock is ticking down. As we do see McCluskey making his way through turn number 10. We do look back to where's your leaders in the LMP3 class of Matt Short and CSA Endurance. His second driver, or the driver with him, being Stefan Vessels, is out the car, and Short has the responsibility to get the car all the way to the end now as he makes his way through turns 3 and 4. And well, not too long to go here for Matt Short as he comes around. And indeed, you have one more lap after this one as we're to understand it, with our race leader McCluskey now going on to the final lap. He's just crossed the timeline to go on to what is lap number 84 here, and will now turn in the car down, having set the fastest lap and waiting to see whether Clemens responds, and Clemens is unable to respond. So I think the LMDH drivers have used up all the battery, and now it will just be a simple stroll to the finish. If it's anything but that in an LMDH car, indeed it can be a very tricky car to drive, there's no doubt about it. But still, as Meredith makes his way onto his final lap, and the clock strikes 2 hours now, so we are on the final lap for all the drivers on our classes. Well, Meredith has brought the gap to SR Technic Endurance down to 13 seconds. He has brought that gap down by 5, in fact by over 10 seconds since leaving the pit lane. He is taking a lap 3 to 4 seconds out Sergio Vieira, but there's just not enough time in the race right now. If we had 2 hours and 40 minutes, it could be very different, but today it has been brought down to 120 minutes or 2 hours, 2 hours whole, given the number of tries. And Meredith there gets it wrong, coming on through turn number 6, just pushing a bit too hard. The car goes on around, but to be fair, well, he has the time to afford it. In the fact, as Craig Tillotson comes on through, he will gain a lap back, but he won't gain position. But meanwhile, here's your race leader, ladies and gentlemen, and it has been a flawless drive from qualifying to lights out and to checker flag. And as he comes to take the checker flag, Next Gen Racing BM's Benjamin McCluskey takes the win at Montreal here today. And the Canadian circuit suiting the Cadillacs and suiting him in particular. It will then be a lap down P2 in the LMDH class. Nick Clemens of iRace eSports, who will become the LMDH Championship leader going into the season finale. We will then have Paul Williams of Speed9 eSports, P2 in the LMP3 class. But meanwhile, we have to look back to the start-finish line, ladies and gentlemen. But here comes SR Technic Endurance as they just gradually make the way on down. They're absorbing the moment in front of the crowd. And Sergio Vieira has driven a flawless race today to take the win, and with it put himself on parity at the top of the GT3 class standings. And then it will be the winners of the LMP2 class, James Spencer Gowan and Azz Tech Racing in the number 9. Before we do see Mark Baker come on through to round off the LMP3 podium in P3 for Speed9 eSports, beating a brilliant piece of strategy between himself and teammate Mike Riedner. And then across the line will be Alex Meredith, P2 in the GT3 class. He did everything he could today, but it wasn't enough after that early pit stop and the mistake going to the grid. And Craig Tillotson, P3 in the GT3 class, were a solid performance. And then we will have Matthew Sheraton round off the LMDH class podium here. P3 for Azz Tech Racing Black, despite it all, holding on to take the podium. But then we will have your LMP3 winners here. Give it a round of applause for CSA Endurance. Matt Shorter brings the car across the line as piloted by Shorter and Stefan Vettels. And they've been in a class of their own, winning the race by a lap over their rivals. And well, their dominance is absolutely understandable here from race to race. The championship will go to the season finale and what will be the Circuit of the Americas next time out, with Speed9 eSports B finishing P3. But well, with that, Shorter will be absolutely pleased. Indeed, the team will know now that their destiny is well as truly in their hands. We also had come across line at Joe Pinder. 20 months ago, finished P5 there for Ignium Motorsport Spark in a difficult end to the day, and indeed looking to battle for P3, but it wasn't to be. And Baz Meacher as well, P4 in the LMP3 class, and Crystal Motorsport LMP3 being outmaneuvered on the strategy by Speed9 eSports B, but still finds a way to steer clear of Ignium Motorsport Spark. As our drivers cool the cars down now and make the way towards the in-lap, what we can see here, Benjamin McCluskey leading the field on around there with the GT3 winners just behind, and as they just gradually take the way down the backstretch. Well, even though it's been a slightly reduced race, 2 hours by no means a less tiring feat here as all the drivers just gradually coming down. Great to see them all there in formation as we look to the blimp camera, and well, everyone bright now. Having enjoyed the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and in the build up to the season, it was a circuit that when it was announced on the schedule, a lot of teams and drivers were really piqued in terms of their interest to see this circuit being featured. But as we do see there, I think Baz Meacher in the Crest Autosport LMP3 not waiting around for anyone and charging on down, and he's fair to do so as he does so safely. All the drivers gradually making their way into the pit lane, and let's take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are. Overall, to begin with, and we can see that Next Gen Racing at BM taking the class, winning the overall win today by a lap over their close rivals iRace eSports, with Nick Clemens behind the wheel, and there was a further lap to Azz Tech Racing Black there, piloted by Jake Pitt and Matthew Sheraton, and they round off the LMDH podium, and with it the overall podium as well. And then in P4 we had our LMP2 winners, Azz Tech Racing, as piloted by James Smagsgow by himself today, albeit Matthew Jolly, the second driver, who has attended in previous rounds. They finished a further 3 laps down, and then a further lap back to CSA Endurance with Matt Shorter and Stefan Vettels behind the wheel, and absolutely delivering a faultless run, and in the end finishing 2 laps up on the rest of their class as a minimum, with Speed9 eSports there, piloted by Paul Williams, runner-up in the LMP3 class P6. Head of Speed9 eSports B was Mike Riedner and Mark Baker, and they completed the LMP3 podium there of what CSA Endurance had of Speed9 eSports and Speed9 eSports B. Crystal Autosport LMP3, Baz Meacher there, P4 in class, P8 overall, a lap ahead of Ignium Motorsport Sparks, Joe Pinder, and then completing the top 10, SR Technic Endurance, the GT3 class winners, and today it was Sergio Vieira piloting the car, and we did not see Vigario in the car, but hopefully we'll see him back for the season finale. They finished ahead of runners-up in the GT3 class and best of the rest overall at Montreal Motorsport UK, piloted by Alex Meredith, who threw everything at this race, there's no question about it, but wasn't quite able to find a way back after that early pit stop where the wrong fuel load had gone in the car, and then round off the GT3 podium P12 FR20 Sim Racing Yellow, but Kratos than 2 laps down in the end, but still taking the key points. Azz Tech Racing White there, the last of the finishers in the race in terms of finishing 21 laps down, but they did cross the line in the end, and Dylan Mystery behind the wheel of the 390 machine. And then we had our 2 retirees who we classified as non-finishers as they did not complete over half the race distance of Next Gen Darkside Racing in the LMP at 3 class for Mark Sykes, and the LMDH class Next Gen Racing at Peaky at JD, with Jamie Dory retiring after the first lap, first corner due to that incident. Going on to the individual classes, well, we can see here in the LMDH class our 3 drivers who finished the race of that Next Gen Racing BM of Benjamin McCluskey, 1 lap ahead of iRace eSports is Nick Clemens, and then Azz Tech Racing Blacks Jake Pitt and Matthew Sheraton at round off the podium, and our single retiree of Next Gen Racing at Peaky JD. And well, congratulations to all of them, and particularly to Next Gen Racing at BM for an absolutely faultless race from start to finish. And then going to the LMP2 class. A great drive there for Azz Tech Racing, and James Pascal absolutely delivering today in a solo effort. And well, they were crowned champions of the LMP2 at Championship going into tonight with their advantage, but this will assert their championship status even more. And congratulations to Azz Tech Racing White and Dylan Mystery for getting the car on home to take the runner-up spot. Going to the LMP3 class meanwhile, and here we can see Matt Shorter and Stefan Vessels of CSA Endurance taking the win by 2 laps ahead of Speed9 Esports. And again, CSA Endurance, bar one lockup we saw on camera, not making any mistakes today, and that really does seem to be their motto, which is absolutely drive flawless, perfection every step of the way, and nailing it time and time again. And they will go into the season finale, our championship favourites, ahead of Speed9 Esports and Speed9 Esports B, with Speed9 Esports B's at P3, keeping them in the hunt for the championship crown, and Mike Reed and Mark Baker with a solid effort there to finish on the 3rd spot of the podium, and therefore it was a Speed9 Esports 2-3 today. Crystal Spot LMP3 at P4 there, just missing out on the podium, did Baz Beecham, but still plenty of positives to take away from today. And holding off Eden Motorsport Sparks, Joe Pinder there, who fished a further lap down with that late spin costing him dear. And then Next Gen at Darkside at Racing's Mark Sykes, rounding off the finishers, albeit a non-finisher as he did retire before the halfway point. We then come on to the GT3 class, last but not least. And we can see here SR Technic Endurance taking the win by 20 seconds in over Montreal Motorsport UK. It would have been closer at the end if there weren't for the spin for Alex Meredith, but that spin cost him dear. But SR Technic Endurance balancing this race, not making a single mistake, and just simply managing their pace throughout. And I think they may have known from the very start when they saw Montreal Motorsport come into the pits on the 2nd lap that they had this race in hand on strategy, and they just needed to be flawless. Montreal Motorsports UK, Alex Meredith doing a phenomenal job meanwhile to try and hunt down that gap, and in the end closing down what was effectively a 47-second gap to finish if we exclude the spin, what would have been 12 seconds behind at the very end. And that goes to show you how hard the Briton pushed, and it just wasn't enough in the end with that 3rd pit stop being the dent in his day. Then FR20 Sim Race Years Kratos rounding off the standings there, P3 2 laps down in the Ferrari 488 Evo in another solid performance. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our racing for today. And, well, brilliant racing from start to finish from all of our drivers. And, well, it's not quite done yet in terms of the broadcast because, of course, we do have our post-round interviews upcoming. And we'll be back in approximately 10 minutes' time for those. So don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss them. We'll see you shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is now time for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And today, we've got a double barrel of LMP2 and some GT3 thrown into the mix as well. And we're going to be starting off by hearing from Azz Tech Racing's James Gilles, the winners in the LMP2 class today, and our LMP2 champions with 2 rounds to spare. Going into tonight, and another stellar performance from them. We'll hear all about that very shortly. And then we're coming on to our GT3 driver, Alex Meredith from Chemi Motorsport UK, and what was a botch strategy which he tried to recover and came very close to doing so, only falling short 5 minutes from the end. And we'll hear his story before then coming on to Dylan Mystery, a newcomer to the grid at 4 tonight, the Azz Tech Racing White driver, enjoying the racing out there and holding on to finish P2 in the LMP2 class. Without further ado, James Gilles joins me in the interview room now. Welcome to you, James, and well, what a solid drive once again. It's a running theme with regards to Azz Tech Racing in the LMP2 class. You guys don't get it wrong, and well, champions going into this round, and just another faultless performance in Canada.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I get to do one solo this week. Matt and Jolly away on holiday. I don't actually know where he's gone on holiday, but he's away on holiday either way. So yeah, on my own tonight. Just had to settle in. Find a rhythm, which I found pretty early on. Obviously, I had Dylan, one of the sister cars. Unfortunately, the only other runner with us for fairly short numbers of drivers, but still good fun. It was all about managing the gap behind, and obviously lapping traffic is always fun, especially around a track like this. There's a fair amount of straights, so you know, a lot of places to overtake the slower classes, but yeah, always fun to manage.
Well, I can hear that enjoyment coming through your voice. And well, the Montreal circuit, a very popular circuit when we announced it in the calendar going into this season. How about yourself? Is this a circuit you enjoy? And if so, which parts of it?
Yeah, it's a good track. It's a good track. It's not necessarily one of my personal favourites. The last chicane is good fun. I can't lie. I do like the last chicane. Very fast. You know, there's a few corners around here that might be one of my lowest, least favourite corners on this sim. But yeah, the first sector and the last corner, 100%. Very good corners. Good fun.
Well, still, with some bits you like and some bits you don't like, a bit of a Marmite relationship with the circuit, if you will. Then going into qualifying, we saw you absolutely give it everything to put it on pole, and well, it looked so out there. You were enjoying the car, the setup, it all came together for a solid lap.
Yeah, no, the quality setup is pretty quick around here. I got a good setup for this track. Was a bit sideways, but that's what the quality setup in this sort of car. You know, you come out of every corner, you get back on the power, and it does go sideways. But the amount of hours I've got in this car, you sort of learn to adapt to that sort of thing. So yeah, getting the lap in was good. I didn't make too many mistakes across quali. I think I did spin once, but you know, we looked past that. But yeah, Dylan, obviously in the second car, was my only competition for tonight as well. So and he's very new to this car. I think this is his first race in the LMP2, full stop. He's never done anything else. So it was good to see Dylan in it. But yeah, it was quite nice and relaxed quality for me personally.
Well, a relaxed qualifying going into a race. Now, we did have a slightly shortened race day of 2 hours rather than 2 hours and 40 minutes. But doing it solo by yourself, did you change any of your pre-race preparation in order to get yourself set up for the fact you didn't have Matthew with you?
I have to do more practice because I haven't got my quicker teammate with me. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously like more endurance when you're doing a bit more driving. I wasn't too upset when the race got shortened. Obviously, beforehand I was against it being shortened because when the announcement was out before, mainly because I had a teammate, so there was no worries for us there. But no, tonight it being shortened by 35 minutes was pretty good. It made it slightly easier. But to be honest, the amount of endurance races I've done this year, I can go on a lot longer than 2.5 hours. So yeah, but pre-race was mainly making sure the setup was very dialed into myself, make sure it was very unique to myself, ready for the long stints.
Well, it sounds as though you had everything measured out, and practice, as they say, makes perfect. And over the course of the race, were any moments when you decided to perhaps change the strategy, or was it more around just managing it out as per the plan?
Well, it seemed that actually every time I pitted, it was a full tank of fuel. even when I got to my last stop, it was a full tank of fuel to the end. Although it did say I needed 1 litre of fuel to do an extra pit stop, but that went away as I made a mistake, so I ended up losing a lap anyway to the overall leader, so it didn't matter anyway. But yeah, the strategy off the beginning was always to put a full tank in it and change tyres every time. The tyres and fuel in this car, and most cars on this sim, when you put a full tank in, the tyres are quicker than the full tank of fuel anyway. So usually there's no benefit to double stinting tyres, especially at this point. But it was all keeping it on the track and managing traffic, and making sure I didn't run out of fuel.
And just on that traffic situation, we've seen here today the lap times be very close across the classes. And well, the LMDH is only being 5 seconds a lap faster and gaining the places to overtake really on the straights compared to the LMP2s. But I can imagine with the LMP3s only being about 3 to 4 seconds off of the LMP2 class, they must have been a bit of a handful to sometimes find a way through, particularly in the opening half of the lap.
Yeah, no, you couldn't get past them in the opening after the lap. I think once or twice I've got round them. I don't know what the corner is, but you sort of get the slow left-hander after the quick section. You know, where Vettel got his penalty a couple of years back in Formula One. There you could sort of slot it round the outside and get him on the brakes. But I think the LMP2 and the LMP3s are very even on the brakes, so you couldn't exactly get past them into the braking zones. However, we are obviously quicker than them in a straight line, so pretty much on the front of the LMP3s, it was all about getting them on the straights, or waiting for a straight, not being too rational with it. You know, there's not worth the risk to try and slot it somewhere or send it around the outside. It's a long race, so you keep it. The LMDHs obviously they got past. I think obviously there's only 4 of them, but they're all 4 drivers that I could trust to get past me pretty easily. And again, same sort of thing. You know, they're better on the brakes than LMP2, but again, very quicker in the straights. And the GTs are pretty much the same as the LMPs, to be honest. You can get past them one place for a corner, but other than that, it was all about the straights.
Oh dear, with the struggles of overtaking traffic, but you found a way through it with each of the classes and letting the LMDHs through where needed, and in the end resulting in a well-driven race to victory. 4 wins in a row now for the Azz Tech Racing team in the LMP2 class. We've got 1 more round to go, 2 weeks from now at the Circuit of the Americas. How are you feeling for it with the championship already wrapped up?
Well, we're feeling good because there's no pressure on our shoulders. I won't be there, unfortunately, so it's Matt's turn to do it solo. So we both get it, so no one feels bad in the end, because I'm in Cyprus for a week. But Matt, it can't feel bad about me doing this round solo because he has to do the next one solo. It's not the worst thing because I don't particularly like Kota either. So, yeah, no, we're feeling good. Pressure off our shoulders. But yeah, I'll hand over to Matt for the last round of the season. Hopefully, he can make it 5 out of 5.
Well, there'll be a bit of pressure on Matt, but still, I'm sure he'll be able to take over from where you've left off. And, well, we look forward to seeing how Matt gets on in Texas 2 weeks from now. But just before we do let you go, James, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Well, even though he's not here, obviously Matt Jolly again, my teammate, for the whole season, championship winning season, so it's brilliant. And then our sponsors, MGPAS, Woodland, RSR, Demon Tweaks, Claremont, and DSD, Deep Space Design. And then obviously yourself and everybody involved at NXTGEN for putting on a good race night, good evening, despite the smaller attendance.
Well, James, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. As always, congratulations on another win, making it 4 out of 4 for the team. And whilst we hope you do have a nice time in Cyprus, and your teammate Matt will be taking over the car for the season finale, we'll all be waiting with bated breath to see if he can make it 5 out of 5 and trigger a perfect run over the season. But until then, take care, and we'll catch you again soon.
Cheers. See ya.
So hearing there from James Smazes-Gow, the LMP2 driver today for Azz Tech Racing, having to do things solo, and interested to hear about the fact he had the longer stints to do in the car, and the sole driver of the car, having to put the extra practice in, but working everything out to the minute detail. And when talking about dealing with traffic as well, really finding in the end it was all about knowing where he could go for the overtakes on the LMP3s and GT3s and where he couldn't. And in the opening half of the lap with the multitude of chicanes and the short straights, not ideal. The latter half of the lap where the straights became longer and the circuit started to open up, that's where the opportunities could be made, and that is the craft work that makes champions. And Azz Tech Racing deserved LMP2 champions, albeit as we heard there mentioned they would have perhaps liked a little bit more competition today, but still they take the results where they can and make the way into the season finale 2 weeks from now, looking to try and make it 5 wins in a row, and with that a perfect championship season. But will Matthew Jolly be able to do so with James absent? We'll have to wait and see. But now coming on to our second interview of this evening, you know him and love him, it's Alex Meredith from Capital E Motorsport as he gets ready to join me in the interview room. Well, we'll get to hear the perspective on a driver, I think, who has thrown everything at this race today, and it didn't quite work out perhaps as he expected it to at the start, and everything he threw at it, he tried to turn things around, but as he now joins me in the interview room, good evening to you, Alex, and well, I can only imagine you must be exhausted after trying to turn around a strategic blunder into a late success.
Yep, good evening, Paul. I am absolutely exhausted. That race, I think that's the hardest I've ever pushed in any race ever. I mean, I left absolutely nothing on the table for about the last 10 laps, and it was basically just a quali lap after a quali lap. And yeah, the strategic blunder was pretty stupid of me. I just forgot to change the setup to have more fuel in, so obviously you can imagine how frustrated I was with that, having really good pace around the circuit, I felt.
Oh, indeed, and let's talk a little bit about that pace. In qualifying, taking pole position the GT3 class ahead of your rivals by 5 tenths to the end. A phenomenal set of laps put together and culminating a 34.887. Looks as though it was the perfect qualifying session.
Yeah, it was pretty smooth running. Just got a couple of laps together, started building some pace, and every lap I managed to get maybe a 10th here, a 10th there. And then on the last lap I thought, okay, now we've got all the lap, we've, you know, pushed right to the limit on every corner now. So let's string one together, and we did, and that's where the 5/10 gap came from, which I'm extremely happy with.
Well, perfectly strung together, and then going into the race itself, a good start, albeit now we know the reasons why the cars are perhaps a little bit faster off the line compared to perhaps what we expected. But I have to ask, when did you realise the wrong amount of fuel had gone in?
I mean, I'm not sure how I didn't notice it on the formation lap just before, because on the Porsche you have a massive thing saying fuel alarm, so I have absolutely no idea how I didn't notice it. But I think it was about around lap 1 where my my crew chief said, "You've got 5 minutes of fuel remaining," and I was like, "Ah, oh, right, okay." So obviously I was extremely frustrated because obviously I had very good pace, I feel like, around here. So I considered maybe trying to save fuel enough to get a 2-stop, but by the end of the first stop I saw I was around 3 laps down on the fuel already. So it was either save fuel like mad and probably not get close, or push and just, you know, hope for the best.
Oh, indeed, and then pushing as hard as you did all the way through. I don't think we saw a point where the car wasn't being driven to its absolute maximum, and the lap times continued to pour in as the race went on. And I have to ask, when driving that aggressively and trying to find the lap time, was there a particular approach you had in mind in terms of sort of trying to stint yourself? Because surely driving at that high intensity for so long, you're bound to make mistakes at some point.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what my approach was. I think the approach was, you know, I'm a lap ahead of the car behind, so if I make a mistake and damage the car, then it's not going to be massively impeding to my race. And obviously I have this huge gap ahead of me, and I think the main motivation for me was just to prove that I had the pace around this track and not just have a 20-second gap by merit, is to have a 20-second gap because of the mistake at the start. I think that was my main aim.
Oh, I see. And with that aim in mind, of course, we did have your second pit stop in the end, which came around the hour mark, putting you on the threshold to potentially creep to the end of the race with some fuel saving. Did that cross your mind at any point that you may just be able to get there if you turn down the gas a little bit?
I'd say at the start of the stint it did, but as the stint progresses, you get to imagine what kind of fuel you'll have at the end. And I think I was something like 4 or 5 laps down. So there's no way I'm fuel saving that unless I'm some kind of god, which I'm certainly not. So yeah, I just pushed like mad basically. That's the only thing I could do at that point. And I was so close to getting past him, but then my fuel just completely ran out and I had to pit. It was obviously pretty heartbreaking at the end of a 2-hour race to have to pit around like 4 minutes until the end, but it happened.
Oh, 100%. I think it was heartbreak for many tuning in, particularly your family as well, with your mother and father both watching. But still, we love to see you absolutely charge on and set in fastest lap after fastest lap. And in the end, well, definitely taking the fastest lap points away from today. And I have to ask, were there any moments with the World Champions, given the fact it's a chicane that's claimed so many, but were there any grazes?
Most definitely grazes. I think on the last 10 laps I must have grazed it about 6 of those. I was absolutely on the limit. I'm not sure if I was on board at that point, but I don't know if you saw through there, I was basically half the car was off the ground going out of it. I was absolutely pushing like mad through there.
Oh, most definitely. For 1 month we did ride on board. We saw you gain half a second over SR Technic Endurance through the chicane itself, showing how hard you were pushing. But still, an absolute treat for the eyes there to see somebody in the Porsche 992 giving it everything. And you may have fell short, but you've definitely stolen the hearts of many down the paddock today. And, well, it does mean, as a result, the championship now will go down to the wire in the season finale 2 weeks from now at the Circuit of the Americas. How are you feeling for the season finale?
Not confident at all. I think if I wanted to wrap it up at a track, then it would definitely be this one, which just makes that mistake even more frustrating, because I feel like I'm probably not going to have the championship go my way this season at least, because I think around COTA I've never had the pace. So, you know, it happens. I'm going to try my best. Push like hell like I did today and just see what happens really.
Well, we do look forward to seeing whether you can close the championship out in the state of Texas. But before then, one quick question for yourself, which is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, once again, Kemi Tooley Motorsports for everything they've done for me over this past 6 months, and obviously everybody watching, my parents particularly, giving me lots of support throughout the race. And obviously everybody at NXTGEN for holding this league and all the other leagues that I do as well. Always fantastic people and fantastic racing. And thanks to you as well, Paul, for this fantastic commentary throughout the leagues.
Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in at the interview room this evening. Congratulations once again on an absolutely determined drive. Unfortunately, it was second place at the end of the day, but it shouldn't take away from the fact it was phenomenal driving for the 2 hours to make up on the strategic deficit. And we look forward to seeing how you get on in the season finale 2 weeks from now. But until then, rest well and have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thank you, Paul. You too.
So hearing there from Alex Meredith, the Chemical eMotorsport UK driver in the GT3 class, who literally left nothing behind today. It was all out on the proverbial table with regards to the pace. And as we see these pictures now, immediately having to try and go on the recovery drive as time went on in this race. And well, not noticing the wrong amount of fuel had gone into the car as part of the setup, but very quickly realising on lap number 1, it was then all about trying to turn to the task of just simply delivering lap after lap and making up the time. And well, in the end, making up out of the 50-second deficit, almost 40 seconds over the space of 2 hours. And that goes to show you how SR Technic Endurance will by no means slouching around in their racing either. Well, Alex Meredith today definitely giving it everything. It wasn't enough, but it puts him in prime position to take the GT3 class championship in our season finale. And whilst he may have downed his chances somewhat, I think he is going to have a sizable points advantage of at least about 15 to 20 points. And what all he'd need to do is finish behind his rivals to take the crown. But can he do it? We'll find out then. Now going on to our final interviews for this evening, we'll be hearing from Azz Tech Racing White very shortly, and in particular from Dylan Mystery, who we've not had the pleasure of joining us in the interview room before, but as he gets ready to join me now, we'll get to hear his perspective, and definitely has been an evening of learning in the LMP2 machine. And as the Azz Tech Racing White driver now joins me in the interview room. Good evening to you, Dylan. And well, it looked as though you had a bit of an educational experience at Canada today in the LMP2, albeit with it a lot of fun in the car.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, it was a very interesting experience, obviously. I was obviously thrown in the deep end. I'd obviously driven the car prior to the race quite a few times. But yeah, I had I had an issue with my throttle, and that was causing me to go off track a lot. And it was at the end, it was trying to find a balance and trying to adapt to the issue that I had with my wheel.
Well, that's very unfortunate with regards to the issue you were suffering from. If you don't mind me asking, what exactly was it doing? Was it making it hard to control full throttle input versus a low amount of input? What was it doing to the car?
It was just like so obviously Circuit Gilles Villeneuve has a lot of hard braking zones. Obviously every time I was braking, my foot was off the throttle, but the throttle input was moving on its own. So I I was not moving the car myself, but the throttle was doing it. It was just overpowering the brake to the point where I was going off nearly every corner, and I didn't have the opportunity to save it. But luckily I avoided any collisions before anything bad could happen.
Oh, goodness me, a nasty place to be with regards to that issue. I can definitely sympathise with you. But still, in trying to conquer the issue, in qualifying, we got to see you string a few laps together and will P2 in the class in the end, behind a fellow team of Azz Tech Racing piloted by James Smazes-Gal. But it looked so as the session went on, the lap times were gradually coming down more and more.
Yeah, it was just trying to adapt. Obviously, I'd been practicing on a much hotter track, so it was trying to get the tyres warmed up. Altogether, it's just trying to adapt to the circuit. I think as the race went on, the car became more and more easy to drive. I actually found it. I ended up staying behind the GT3 car, even though they had the pace. I had the pace advantage. I felt that it was probably a safe call to stay behind because of my throttle issue. But yeah, but as the race went through, I felt the lap times were getting there. It wasn't obviously the ultimate lap time I wanted, but at the end I was getting there and slowly learning the car, slowly learning the setup, and just finding the right rhythm to keep on going.
Well, indeed, and that's what it's all about, just getting yourself more and more in that rhythm as time goes on. And with this Montreal circuit being broken up into a variety of chicanes and straights, there's also plenty of time to take a little bit of a breather between each and every corner sequence. And I have to ask, with regards to this circuit, we heard from your colleague James earlier on, he's not the biggest fan of the circuit. How about yourself? Are you a fan of Montreal, or is it one of those circuits which you could prefer other circuits instead?
Well, yeah, I have a different opinion to James. I love Montreal. I love Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. It's an amazing circuit. Do you know what? Even though it's a street circuit, the facilities they've got there, you know, it does feel like a permanent racing facility. And you know, I feel Circuit Gilles Villeneuve has got it all. It's not like a Tilke circuit. There isn't all the 90-degree corners. Like, it's got that rhythm, it's got that flow, and I think it's a circuit that you can't hate. It's a circuit that I think everyone would eventually find the passion for.
Oh, indeed, I could hear that passion shining through from yourself. And coming back to your racing, we did see as time went on, well, putting some faster and faster laps together. And on the strategy, with a good number of visits to the pit lane, I have to ask, how did you adjust your strategy accordingly? Was it in the end just light amount of fuel going in the car, or was it some stops, just get the repair work, get things checked over, then back out straight away?
It was just playing it safe. Obviously, I went into pit lane lap 1. I got during the start. James got through. I can't word myself. The the hypercar was, believe a hypercar had spun, and unfortunately I got collected and picked up a bit of damage. So what was happening down the back straight was the LMP3s and the GT cars were much quicker than me. So I made the decision first time to go in the pit lane just to see if it was drivable. I didn't end up getting it repaired, but I avoided any traffic, so I could just focus on the race myself. But with fuel and stuff, it was just filling it up to the end. I only did around about 2 fuel stops and 2 tyre changes, but the rest were just getting it fixed, playing it safe. It's better to have a car that's drivable than a car that is going to be quite unpredictable. The car today was when I had no throttle issues, it was really predictable and it was quite easy to drive.
Oh, that's great to hear. It definitely sounds as though Carl at the end of the race, the car was in a very strong place. You felt very comfortable with the car. And, well, speaking of that comfort, bringing it on home, and whilst you may have brought it home a few laps down on your rivals, still getting to the end, it means you've got the points to the board for second place in class. And we've got one more round to go at the Circuit of the Americas. 2 weeks from now, can we expect to see you out on the circuit in Texas?
Well, the plan is, I do plan to be at COTA. Obviously, I've got to try and learn the car and circuit, but yeah, the plan was for me was I was originally supposed to do round 1 when we had the LMP3, but we had a few technical issues. I skipped the next 2 rounds, but the plan was for me to do the North American tracks with Gabriel Yilmaz when he comes back. So next race there should be 2 of us, and hopefully we can have a much cleaner race.
Well, we'll be looking forward to seeing you partner up with Gabriel for the season finale. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, there is. I want to thank the Azz Tech Racing team. I want to thank MGPS, especially Lorenzo and Fletcher. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in the broadcast as well. I want to thank you, Paul, for doing the broadcast. Always week in, week out, you do an amazing job. But yeah, I just want to thank the drivers as well. Everyone tonight did an amazing job.
Well done. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room, and congratulations on your performance today despite the circumstances, finding a way in the end to get the issues away and focus on delivering some solid laps, and in the end to a solid P2 in the LMP2 class. We look forward to seeing yourself and teammate Gabriel Yilmaz out on the circuit for the season finale 2 weeks from now. But until then, have a fantastic evening and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Paul.
So here and there from Dylan Mystery, our final interview for the day. And sad to hear he did have a number of issues with his throttle pedal in particular going into the race and even into qualifying, with the throttle still engaging when he came off the throttle in terms of lifting his foot off and applying the brake into corners. And they're having to really work out how to try and stabilise the car despite the circumstances. But that attitude, that positivity and that want to keep on racing and not give up, and that's a fantastic attitude to have, and that's the attitude we really do encourage here at NXTGEN Racing. And Azz Tech Racing and their devolved teams such as Azz Tech Racing White really embodying what it means to be sim racers and motorsport drivers in spirit, in the fact when they've got a problem they find a way around it and carry on and seek to have fun and enjoy the racing. And well, I definitely reckon that Dylan and teammate Gabriel Yilmaz are going to have a great season finale, and we look forward to seeing plenty from them at the Circuit of the Americas. But until then, it's a solid P2 on his debut. Dylan Mystery definitely, I think, captured a few hearts along the way. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that now concludes our final interview, and with it, all of our interviews for this evening. You heard firstly from James Smagscow, the LMP2 class winner today for Azz Tech Racing in the number 9. We then heard from our GT3 runner-up from Capital E Motorsport UK, Alex Meredith, in the 96. And we've just heard from the 390 of Dylan Mystery in the LMP2 class for Azz Tech Racing White. Congratulations to all 3 drivers on their performances over the course of today, and thank you to them all for joining me in the interview room. But with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the NXTGEN Racing community, we do recommend you firstly check out our official website. That's at nextgenracing.co.uk. Perhaps you're sat there right now thinking that you want to be on the grid for a future series, or you want to know a little bit more about our ongoing series. Well, if you do head to our website, you'll be able to find out all the details there and plenty more, for it is the home of clean and fair sim racing for all. And in our 17th year now of hosting online sim racing leagues, we continue to go from strength to strength at NXTGEN NXTGEN Racing, and our focus now being primarily on PC-based leagues, but we've got plenty in store and offer, and primarily on the iRacing platform, and we'd love to have you as part of the community. And do head to our website to find out more about our ongoing and upcoming series. But if you don't want to go to our website, you can, of course, follow us on Facebook instead. That's the recommended place if you're a bit of a social media person. And our Facebook group may be found at facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. And there you can find out much like the information on our website with regards to our leagues and series. But also you can find out a little bit more about the staff that make up NextGen Racing and the admins, and what we do on the real circuit just as much on the virtual circuit, with a good number of our staff members and admins being track marshals, and also some of them real-world race drivers. But now, ladies and gents, when attention turns to the season finale, 2 weeks from today, on Wednesday the 30th of August, we bring the curtain down at the Circuit of the Americas. It'll be round 5 of 5, and in the Tilka Design Circuit in the hot and barren area of Austin in Texas, we look forward to seeing who will come out on top at a circuit that has a little bit of everything. It's borrowed from most circuits around the world, but the only thing our drivers will be looking to borrow is victory for the final time this season. But who will it be, and who will be crowned our champions? We'll find out then. But until then, we've been NextGen Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX11 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.